Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday in this worst of all seemingly possible timelines. If you're not living in the United States, count yourself lucky because people are now receiving emails to get them to report anti-Christian bias. Well, I have an anti-Christianity bias. I don't think I'm anti-Christian. As a matter of fact, I'm very pro-Christian in helping them leave Christianity. But please inform everyone in the government that I definitely have an anti-Christianity bias, an anti-Judaism bias, an anti-Islam bias, and Scientology. Add them all on there. Whatever your preferred nonsensical BS is, I'm opposed to it. Also, the Pope died. Now, that really irritates the crap out of me. Not because the Pope's dead, but because this Pope was definitely the best Pope of my lifetime. However, that's not the part that really irritates me. The part that irritates me are all the atheists that are, oh, this was the best Pope, and he was the first one to really make people try to be Christ-like. Please stop with your left-leaning Jesus was a socialist hippie respin of the fucking narrative in order to make excuses. Was Francis a better pope? Yeah. Was he a better person? Probably. He made some positive changes. We'll see if any of them last at all. Whether they remain is still up to be seen. And I wish there was never going to be another pope because the church needs to go away, but I sincerely hope that all the popes are at least as good as Francis, if not better. But I'm not going to praise someone for being the best in a long line of awful leaders of a criminal organization just because the best leader of a criminal organization is still the leader of a criminal organization. The Catholic Church has a massive history of abusive priests, not just sexually abusive, but abusive priests across the board, but sexual abuse as well. Dioceses in the United States have paid about $5 billion of Catholic parishioners' donations to abuse victims over the last 20 years. And that doesn't include the settlements prior to that, which are under non-disclosure agreements. The Catholic Church possibly caused the death of as many as 4,000 Indigenous people in Canada because their schools were not properly equipped. They supported dictatorial regimes. They opposed contraception, including condoms, and this has stopped condoms from being used in the prevention of HIV/AIDS. When challenged on this, Pope Francis, the good one, said that the church opposes condom use, but that's not a big deal because the real problem is a lack of clean water and malnutrition. Hey, I'm sorry to the fans of Francis, but that's not the cause of HIV/AIDS. That's an excuse that the Pope gave to not have to change policies in a way that would actually help people, which is incredibly ironic as the Catholic Church is also the largest provider of HIV/AIDS care. Now, this is really confusing to me. They are proud and happy and eager to talk about all the good work they're doing for these sick people, except allowing them to use something that might prevent the condition in the first fucking place. I wonder if this is an example of them doing their alms in public. Ooh, let's be nice and charitable to the people who we helped make sick. That'll look good. The Catholic Church hoards wealth and might be worth as much as $200 billion in current estimates. That's one half of one Elon, which, I don't know if the church is for sale, but Elon could evidently buy the Catholic Church outright, still have a couple $100 billion. No need to do that as long as they're working for the same evil. Vatican City would serve the world better if every priest were removed from it and all of that art and money were liquidated to turn Vatican City into a place full of hospitals, homeless shelters to help people who are unhoused and disenfranchised. Yeah, but he encouraged them to be more Christ-like. Well, what the fuck makes you think being Christ-like is a good thing? Christ? Jesus? That guy? The guy whose disciples suggested that the woman who brought the ointment to anoint his feet should have sold that expensive ointment and given the money to the poor, only have Jesus say, hey, you'll always have the poor. Let her wipe my feet. That guy who cared so much about the poor that he'd rather have his feet anointed than help them. That guy who said he came not to bring peace, but a sword. That guy who told a grieving son who wanted to become one of Jesus's followers, come on, let's go. And the guy said, I need to bury my father. He just died. And Jesus is like, let somebody else do it. That kind of loving guy. The guy who endorsed the Old Testament laws, which is the inconvenient part for all of the Jesus was a liberal hippie socialist narrative people, because you're skipping the part of the narrative where Jesus is God, the same today, tomorrow, and forever, the same God that set up humans to fail in the garden, the same God that flooded the entire world except for a drunk who cursed his son's descendants to be the slaves of his other sons. The same God who endorsed slavery, who opposed gender equality, who doesn't allow women to own property in the same sense that men can, who says homosexuals are deserving of death, who advocates for inherited sin and eternal punishment, who instructs the slaughter of entire groups of people except for the virgin girls. And how did they figure out which ones were virgins? But those you could keep for yourself. The God who commands that a rapist should be forced to marry their rape victims. The God who prescribes exactly how much you should pay for one of your slaves, who is too stupid to know that inflation is going to occur and a few shekels are going to be worth a completely different amount at some point in the future, or may not even be a unit of currency. This brilliant genius, this guy who had a plan to fix the world that just kept going wrong over and over and over and over until he had to hit the reset button a couple times, and then decided, you know what, I'm done. I had my chosen people, but they didn't pay any attention, and now I'm gonna save the world by cursing fig trees and healing a blind person, telling my disciples to go steal a donkey. Jesus isn't separate from that being in the story, and pretending otherwise is putting on the rosiest of rose-colored glasses. Was Jesus slightly better? The character of Jesus in the New Testament, was that slightly better than that's sulfur and brimstone God in the Old Testament? Sure. And on that front, I guess Francis was a little more Christ-like. But Christ-like is not a good thing. Christ-like is the excuse that fearful bigots use to marginalize everybody else. Christ-like is Project 2025. Christ-like is beneath contempt. And considering how many times the College of Cardinals and bishops in the Catholic Church had to walk back comments that the Pope says, when the Pope says something that maybe is brushing up against Catholic tradition, after he says it, earning him goodwill with all the people, the cardinals and the bishops come back and they're like, well, that's not quite what the Pope meant. Who thinks the next Pope's going to be better? I mean, just look around the world. Look at the trend of fascist regimes. Look at how Pope Francis, when he was at his most liberal, was rejected by members of the church, members of the clergy, and accused of not being a true pope by actual Catholics. You think we're going to get somebody that's more liberal than that? And by the way, if we do, what's that going to change? The Catholic Church is still a corrupt criminal organization. They're desperately flailing around trying to fix their reputation after stealing babies from unwed mothers, after making epidemics worse, after supporting fascist regimes. What makes you think you're going to get a better pope? So I'm not celebrating the death of the Pope. I won't be celebrating whoever gets appointed to replace him, whether they're better or worse. I'll hope for better, but the real hope is that the church vanishes. And I don't just mean the Catholic Church. I have an anti-Catholicism bias. I have an anti-Christianity bias. I have an anti-bullshit bias. I have a pro-reality bias. And it's really annoying to be sitting here watching humanistic skeptics, supposedly, praising Francis because, oh, he was so much better than the rest of them. Cool. What has permanently changed about the Catholic Church that makes it good? And what about it became more true or more beneficial because of Pope Francis? Saying it could have been worse and that it was worse in the past is a recognition of something that's true. That doesn't mean it's preferable. Fuck the Pope. Fuck the church. We need to start caring about people. We need organizations, be they religious or not, that are going to stand up against fascist regimes. We need organizations, be they churches or not, that are saying, no, the government should not be in the business of ferreting out proper language or anti-Christian bias or anything like that. Marco Rubio recently said that if you're coming to the United States to tell us we're doing stuff wrong or to promote Hamas, you shouldn't come. Well, I get it. You probably don't want to let in the people who are going to disagree with you, but there's this thing that we're supposed to have, and it says, what's that? Freeze. I think it's like freeze peach or something like that. The government, whether you're a citizen or not, doesn't get to decide what your position is on anything, and doesn't get to decide what position you're allowed to speak about on anything. You can be pro-Christian, anti-Christian. You can be pro-Israel, anti-Israel. You can be pro-Hamas, anti-Hamas. You can be pro-Gaza. You can be pro-Palestinian. You can be anti any of those things. You can be pro-Trump. You can be anti-Trump. But what we have here now is the implementation of making sure people have the right speech. Well, you're going to have to kill me or throw me away in an El Salvadoran prison before I stop pointing out that your religions have not made their burden of proof, that your religions are corrupt, that the people who are running this nation are unqualified, that DEI doesn't mean someone is not qualified to have the same certifications that anybody else. You've turned equality, equity, diversity, you've turned those things into bad words, dirty words, so that you can prop up your completely unqualified, irresponsible, dangerous, drunk friends to be secretaries of defense or whatever else. Oh, we're just going to keep leaking security stuff all over the place, but let's make sure that those terrible trans people, nobody gets to recognize them. For you atheists out there, this wasn't even in my list of things because I've already talked about Dawkins over and over again. But Richard Dawkins has just basically gone full on super transphobe, posting pictures of trans people protesting, talking about pissing on turfs. Decided to post about how they think they're women, but this is the most toxically masculine thing ever, talking about peeing on stuff. So your atheist heroes are falling by the wayside. The secular humanists that should be standing up for this are doing so and yet struggling. The United States government is a fascist oligarchic government attempting to stifle free speech, making people disappear, shuffling them off somewhere else. By the way, I saw a great meme today. Auschwitz wasn't in Germany. For those who don't get the meme, they were shipping people out of Germany so that they would be not held accountable for it. So that, it's not our responsibility. That prison's over there. This exact same thing is happening right now. Oh, they're not coming for you yet. So no, I'm not optimistic about a pope. I'm not optimistic about a new pope. I'm not really too optimistic about much of anything. But I'm going to keep showing up and explaining what's going on and objecting to the objectionable and doing everything I can to encourage people to get off their asses, to vote, to participate in the system, to stand up and protect those people who are not in a position to protect themselves, to make sure that these fake ICE agents that are running around harassing people, these weekend warrior pieces of shit, or individuals like Mark Wayne Mullen, who never served. I fucking served. I'm defending the Constitution. Mark Wayne, you are shitting on it. All of these people are corrupt and incompetent. And it's not just because the stock market's tanking. It's not just because Tesla lost 71% or had a 71% reduction in profits. I don't give a shit about the price of eggs. I care about people who are vanishing. I care about people who are forcibly being reassigned with respect to their gender identity, with respect to the markers on their driver's license, their birth certificates. I object to the police state wondering, is there some anti-Christian bias, and how dare we promote diversity amongst qualified individuals and instead favor nepotism, where Trump's propaganda minister, well, I can't say anything nice about her, so I won't say anything at all. On that front, I can say amazingly nice things about my co-host tonight. Please join me in welcoming Promise, who you all know from Eve Was Framed. How are you?
I'm all right. That was really nice to sit and listen to, though. I could go to that church if that's what was being said.
It might need to be that way someday.
Yeah, I was just posting a video myself talking about this anti-Christian bias email that's been sent out to the VA, and it's wild to me that so many Christians don't understand the threat that this is to their free speech as well. Because which version of Christianity, as you pointed out, there's so many different sorts. Which Jesus, which cherry picking of what Jesus has said are we going with to say what is anti-Christian or not? Some of them, I have Christian friends that would say that being MAGA is anti-Christian. So then can they report their coworkers for being MAGA and say that that's an anti-Christian bias? You know, who gets to decide? I mean, I think we know under this administration what they're going to go with, but that should terrify anybody, religious or not, that the government gets to or is attempting to thought police your beliefs that are in your head. That's absurd.
Yeah, this came up once before with regard to religion's tax-free status. So the government grants a de facto nonprofit status to religions, but it's to religions that they recognize. This puts the government in the position of saying, you're a religion, you're not. They are already in that position. The Church of Scientology fought against that in order to get recognition as a religion. They eventually won, even though Scientology is the most ridiculous scam that's been banned from other countries. But here it counts as a religion. So, you know, if they don't ask you for a penny, I'll eat my hat. But what that means is, if you want a tax-free status as a religion, you either have to be one of the already recognized religions, or you have to convince the government that you are an actual religion. How do you do that? And if the government is going to go after anti-Christian religions, like Promise was talking about, which ones? I mean, the KKK claims to be a Christian organization. Is that the right one? Because right now, that's the one that's most consistent with how I view the Christians in our government. If that's the case, then now the government is not just declaring what counts as a religion for tax purposes, but they're the ones that are going to be declaring what counts as the correct version of religion. And then freedom of religion and freedom from religion go away because you are just not legitimate unless you are part of the state-controlled church. And for this promise made this point is brilliant. I just want to put a button on it. And that is, for every Christian out there, how confident are you that your version of Christianity is going to be the one that is picked? Because the odds are not in your favor. And those of you who are most liberal, most left-leaning, you gay-friendly churches, you non-denominational churches that have your Black Lives Matter thing up and we trust science and love is love, you guys are not going to win. Guaranteed, you are not going to win when push comes to shove. Have you read the Project 2025 stuff? I can tell you that while it's probably not going to go all the way to Westboro, it's going to be closer to Westboro Baptist Church than it is to the gay-friendly church out in LA. This is a live call-in show. The number 720-619-2288. Promise and myself are both former believers, and we are here so that if somebody wants to call in and defend their religious beliefs, by all means do that. We'll continue to put theists at the top. There are other options to talk about other things. But if you're a Christian and you are opposed to what this administration is doing, if you look at Trump and his DUI hires as if they are not in fact representative of your version of Christianity, call in. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Are you going to stand side by side with the godless heathens and say, nope, we need the proper separation of church and state, the proper separation of religion and government? It's not just that the religion is encroaching on the government with Project 2025. That turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy in a loop where the government now has to select which version of religion it's going to go with. And it's going to go with the Project 2025 one because they're the ones that are in charge. They're the ones that are replacing everybody. There's a reason that they're going through and firing people left and right. Doge hasn't found any fraud or waste. If they had, there would be criminal charges and there would be notifications about this. Are they saving money? Yes, you can save a massive amount of money by just firing a bunch of people. You can save a massive amount of money by canceling grants, research grants for medical research stuff, which they've done. Right now, Harvard seems to be the only one that had the sack to stand up to him. And then the government caved and, it was just a mistake. But that doesn't matter. It's a mistake. It's the same excuse they use for the gentleman that is in El Salvador right now in a prison. And they're like, the Democrats, they don't care about due process for January 6th folks, but they want due process for MS-13 people. Well, I want due process for everybody. And the January 6th people did get their due process and they were convicted. Just like the 34-time felon that sits in the White House right now. They were convicted. Just like the individual who has countless rape allegations against him, who has settled lawsuits, who has spent tens of millions of dollars to shut people up or shut down all of the bad things that he's done. But hey, it's us godless heathens who evidently have no grounding for morality or logic and who just, we're the hedonists here. We don't care about other people. I'd like to have people in impoverished countries have their quality of life improved, have access to healthcare, have access to condoms, have access to medicine that they otherwise don't have. Why is it that the left-leaning folks who view Jesus as the liberal socialist hippie dude that he wasn't, even if that's your view of who Christ was, I'm more Christ-like in that sense than any preacher I've ever met from any fucking Christian church. I cannot believe the world I wake up in every day. Like if you came to me 20 years ago when I started doing this and said, hey, I can't show that there's a causal connection between you, what you're getting ready to do, and the way the world's going to turn out, but here's a snapshot of the world in 2025. I might have quit and spent the last 20 years doing something else entirely. I don't think I would have, but I might have. It just seems so futile. Do people care about truth? I don't know. If you're somebody who cares about truth, if you think Promise and I have missed some truth with regard to gods or ghosts or goblins or whatever else, call in and let us know. If you think that you have access to the mind and heart of the one true God and he's disappointed with the way the world is going, call and explain how you know that you have an accurate understanding of God. And you can also say why he's not doing anything. Why is it that these people are screaming out in prayer for help and hearing nothing, getting no response? Why are citizens of the United States who were born here being threatened with deportation if they don't have their papers that they don't have and never had and shouldn't need? I saw a bus burst into flames and then explode. It was a big, like, Choose Jesus bus or something. And so it made the news because, oh, this bus caught fire. That doesn't impress me. That's not an argument against the power of prayer or God or anything else. You know, maybe they weren't the right Christians. Maybe that was a way for them to get a new, better bus. Maybe God was working in mysterious ways. None of that crap impresses me. You know what impresses me? The real suffering that's going on. When some innocent bystander is starving and dying of something, and the religious organizations are preventing help from getting to them, that impresses me. It is a negative impression on behalf of those churches. But so, yeah, was Francis better than any of the other popes? Sure, but you know, you're comparing him to a former Hitler Youth and then a bunch of dudes, you know, with their dumb hats and fancy dresses that just wanted to sit there and shuffle pederasts around so that they didn't ever have to pay for their crimes. It's a really low bar to be the best pope. All right. We have callers calling in. Let's see how this goes. Jackie's calling in from Tennessee, pronouns are he, him. How can I find peace after being indoctrinated into a religion I don't know that I believe? What if I'm wrong and go to hell? Hey, Jackie, how are you? You're on with Promise and me.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing all right.
Not too bad. What's going on?
I've always just kind of been on the fence when it comes to whether there's a God or not, because, I mean, I've looked at the research and a lot of it doesn't make any sense. But I was so heavily indoctrinated that the fear of hell still gets to me. And like I said, like, I've always just kind of pushed it off, and like, not to get too personal, but I have a disease that's probably going to kill me within a few months. So I can't put it off any longer. So I'm just wondering, like, how do I find peace, you know, with like not going to hell, because I'm terrified of it.
Which hell?
Specifically the Christian one, because that's one I was raised to believe in.
Okay. What if you were raised to believe in the wrong hell and there's another hell that you're going to go to because you bought into this one?
I mean, it's a possibility.
Well, I mean, I think you're dealing with, hey, this is the hell I was taught to be afraid of. What if I were to tell you about 3 other hells that you should be afraid of? Now you're in a position where you've heard about 4 hells. You have no reason to believe any of them are real. Are you afraid of all 4 of them?
I suppose not.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be glib at all, Jackie. I'm empathetic to your situation. I hear from people all the time. I didn't really suffer that much with this. I never really lived with a fear of hell. Hell was just a reality that I had already avoided by accepting Jesus into my heart when I was 5. So,
I
I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Promise, because I want to find out how I
was
can find peace.
terrified. I was so terrified of hell, and of course, I was told over and over again, "Well, you're saved, so you shouldn't be." But I was still so concerned. Ironically, what if something happens and it makes me doubt my faith, and then I become an atheist, and then I'm going to hell? I was like preemptively worrying. I also had anxiety and a form of OCD that centers around religious ideas, and so I totally relate to that fear. I don't suffer from it anymore, but part of I don't know what exactly would work for you, Jackie, but part of what worked for me to at least feel at peace with questioning whether there was a hell or not, and that's where I finally got some answers that made me feel significantly better, is I asked myself, well, if the God I believe in is supposedly all loving, all powerful, and all knowing, then that God would know my heart and would know that I'm genuinely trying to figure out what's true or not, and that God would not and would have the ability to not send me to hell, or however you want to word that, based on me just being genuine and honest in my search. And so that really gave me enough security to move forward from there. Started researching, even just the theology around hell, and realized how shaky it is and how it's not based on much as far as knowing exactly what hell I should be afraid of and what it would be like and all of that. And then I finally reached the conclusion where I have no reason to believe a hell exists, not any more than I do any other afterlife that somebody could make up and popularize and make it sound really scary so that I feel like this impending doom if I don't believe and figure out what to do to avoid it. So it might help you to start there. Also, if you haven't heard of them, Recovering from Religion, they have their website, recoveringfromreligion.org. They have a helpline where you can have a whole conversation with somebody and kind of go back and forth on this as well. They specifically talk to people who have fear of hell. But I'm so sorry that you're having to think about that and live with that fear. I know a lot of people that even once they intellectually move past the idea that a hell exists, that fear can live in your body. That's part of indoctrination. And I think acknowledging it is a big step forward.
Okay.
Is there a specific part that has you like that you really can't get out of your head, like a specific question, or is it just this generalized fear?
It's just a generalized fear, and I guess, like I said, it's not logical, but I mean, emotionally, it's still really keeping me from having peace, and that's all I want at this point in my life is just a little bit of peace.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I would feel the same. I really recommend Recovering from Religion. What's cool about them as well is because they have where you can call somebody, or you can do even like a messenger chat. And so you don't have to just have this one conversation. You can talk about like, hey, right now I'm just like not feeling at peace about this and need somebody to talk to about it. And they'll help you out with that, because I do think it's a process. And as you said, you may not have much time. And so to be able to have somebody to maybe talk with, as something comes up might benefit you best.
Okay.
Jackie, I'm gonna echo that. Not only are we getting ready to do another fundraiser for Recovering from Religion, it's genuinely one of the finest and most helpful organizations I'm aware of for people struggling with issues like this. They're not going to try to make you an atheist or not. They also are tied to the Secular Therapy Project, and that will get you counselors that aren't going to try to use religion as a counseling tool, but are just going to deal with who you are from a scientific perspective, and go with reliable methods for helping you deal with anxiety, depression, all of the things associated with this. I will say those are probably the best options that I could think of for other people to reach out to. But give yourself permission to be occasionally terrified. What if I'm wrong? Nothing wrong with thinking, what if I'm wrong? But when you do so, also take a second and say, yeah, but what if I'm wrong about whether I'm wrong? And what if I'm wrong about which hell I'm avoiding? And what if I'm wrong about this? And the number of times that all of us could just sit here and say, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? That could lead to a complete catatonic state where you can't make any decision because you're never going to be supremely confident that you're not wrong about stuff. And for me, one of the biggest realizations is if there is a God, and that God is looking down and seeing you as someone who's looking at the possibility of not continuing to live for various reasons and is struggling with ideas of heaven and hell and religion, and that God is doing absolutely nothing to ease your anxieties and fears, what's more likely, that God is corrupt and evil and should be ignored, or does not exist and should therefore be ignored, or that they love you but they're just too busy to let you know which hell to avoid and how to do it? I know what I think is more probable. This was in part something that was done to you, this particular indoctrination. I like to put the responsibility back on God's shoulders. If there's a God there and he knows my heart, as Promise was talking about, if he cares about me, he can show up anytime and fix this. After I just did a vicious, Christianity smackdown a little while ago, God could show up right now and say, hey, I heard what you said, and I still love you, and you got some of it wrong, and I'd like to explain this to you. Why doesn't that ever happen? Ever. I think you're at a point where you are recognizing that this is something that is less prone to certainty than any of our daily views, which are also not subject to certainty. I don't know anything. I don't know the sun's going to come up with absolute certainty tomorrow. I'm supremely confident that the sun will rise in the morning, but I could be wrong. But you're looking at things like afterlives, where it's not even just a guess. It is a parade of miscellaneous speculations that offer nothing of use and only get used as carrot and stick to control people's thoughts. I hope you find the peace you're looking for. I definitely would recommend talking to Recovering from Religion, and to cut yourself some slack and make sure that you're being fair every time but what if I'm wrong? Ask yourself that question about other things too.
Yeah, I've had similar thoughts too. Like, God has all these moral absolutes of like, do not kill, don't do this, and then he tells his followers to do it. And like, I don't know, like sometimes I think, well, God has more sins on him than I do. I mean, I didn't flood the whole earth.
Yeah. And I don't think you could, even if you wanted to.
Definitely not.
But also, I don't think
reliable,
God could either.
Right. It's definitely not a reliable narrator, and doesn't really give good reasons to believe that any of those threats are true. And I think back to what Matt originally asked you, why aren't you afraid of any other afterlives, or like afterlife claims? I would dig into that a bit more too, and really ask yourself, go research some other afterlife claim. Okay, why does this one not bother me? It is because there's a trauma there, an indoctrination there of when you've been told to be afraid of something so many times, that can stick around, like you said, even when it logically doesn't make sense. And that might help you get to the root of finding the path to how you figure out if something is true or not and worth being afraid of. Because clearly there's all kinds of other things that you're not afraid of and you are at peace about. And maybe figure out how your brain reached those conclusions enough to feel peace about those claims. And it might help you here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I'll start with recovering from religion then. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks so much, Jackie.
I hope you both have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
You too. Wishing all the best for you.
Thank you.
I will do everything I can to try to make sure that we have a wonderful night. I always have the best nights when Promise is here. For what, like, we don't get to hang out enough, but so it's like always nice when we get to do a show. But I think there's not a person in chat that wouldn't agree that I am at least some tiny percentage better on the days when Promise is on the show with me than on days when Promise is not here. So don't let it go to your head. You're not perfect. You're just awesome.
Well,
all right. So here we go. This is a little unusual. Is it RAO or RAO that's calling?
It's RAO. And Promise, didn't you just do a show yesterday?
I did. I host Chewed Gum on Tuesdays with Alyssa. Well, Alyssa couldn't be there last night, but usually it's her and I.
You are putting in work. I was thinking about calling this in yesterday, but it didn't seem to fit the topic.
It doesn't fit today
And
either.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my list. My teeth are sitting by the sink. But Matt, I want to read something to you from my gospel right quick.
How long is it?
People are fallible. 2-3 sentences. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify and resolve any harm that must have been caused. If you remember me, then you know that I have a sincere apology for you. I'm medicated now, and I am on a better emotional state, and I hope that takes effect.
Okay. I don't remember. Apology accepted. Let's move on. You're calling to say that we have evidence to prove that aliens are real. Do you mean that aliens as in intelligent life somewhere else in the galaxy or the universe?
I'm talking about the Tic Tac that the Navy saw.
Okay, that doesn't answer my question. When you say when you say aliens are real, we have the evidence to prove it. Are you talking about intelligent beings that come from somewhere other than Earth?
Yes.
What is the evidence that proves that there are intelligent beings that aren't from Earth?
All right, my best evidence is the Tic Tac video from about 2014. There were a couple of naval pilots who were following this craft that was moving way beyond anything that any human has produced.
Okay, so let's assume for a second that there's a video that shows something moving faster than any of us are aware of humans being able to travel. How does that prove that there's intelligent aliens somewhere else in the galaxy?
Well, if humans didn't do it, then somebody else had to.
How did you determine? No. I'm asking how that proves that there are aliens. This is specifically either an argument from ignorance fallacy or an argument from personal incredulity fallacy, because what you're saying is there's a video for which we do not have a human-based explanation. Therefore, the explanation must be alien intelligence. How did you rule out all other options like technology that is human that you don't know about and natural circumstances that isn't alien?
Well, the natural explanation is that we have the fastest vehicles that any species has
Okay,
created.
I'm going to
We
stop
have
you
the
again.
fastest-
I'm going to
we have the
stop you
fastest-
again. I'm going to stop you again because you are not answering the question. I don't need you to the naturalistic explanation that we have the fastest vehicles ever created. No, you're not understanding. There's an observation that these Navy pilots made, correct? Yes or no?
Correct.
That observation does not seem to be explainable currently as human originated, correct?
Correct.
Does the fact that something does not seem to be explainable as a human origin prove that it is not in fact of human origin?
Well, once it got released.
No, I'm sorry. That's a
somebody-
yes or I'm sorry. That's a yes or no question. I'm leading to something, so play along and do yes or no. Does the mere fact that something does not seem to be of human origin prove that it is in fact not of human origin?
Not yet.
No, don't just yes or fucking no, smartass. Okay,
I'm
gonna
going to
mute.
go with yes.
I'm gonna mute you. You're not gonna get to speak again for a little while. The next question that I was going to ask you is, does the fact, even if it is true, that we cannot find any reason to think this is of human origin, does that in any way demonstrate that it is of non-human intelligent origin?
If it's not of human origin.
I'm sorry. That's also a yes or no question. I'm going to hang up on you now. Don't call back until you learn to play along, because you are making fallacious, irrational leaps to conclusions. You are saying, here's something that we don't think can come from humans. We don't have an explanation for, therefore it's aliens. That is a fallacious line of reasoning. And the fact that you will not acknowledge that and are constantly looking for a way to dance around to something else means that it's not
If
worth
it
having a
didn't come from
conversation.
humans, then it had to come from non-humans.
No, sir. It means that you're not worth having a conversation with. Goodbye. I have a limit for batshit craziness about, if you're going to flatly say that because this doesn't appear to be of human origin, it must be from alien intelligence. No, that is a fallacy. You have to, you are skipping all of the work. You're like that chalkboard thing of, and then a miracle occurs. The way to prove that there's alien intelligence, which, by the way, there could be, and there probably is, given the vastness of the universe, alien intelligence somewhere that may not be, the question is, are they interacting with Earth at all? And this person thinks that because there's a video that he can't explain and believes other people can't explain, that therefore it must be aliens. Well, congratulations on your suspicion, but you still have all your work in front of you in order to demonstrate that your suspicion is correct. And this is why when I ask simple, straightforward questions where we both knew the answer was no, you were like, not yet. And then when we got to the next question where you knew the right answer was no, you tried to get more in. You do not get to testify on my show if we're in yes or no mode, because we only go to yes or no mode when I can't get you to answer a question without sermonizing and trying to say 12 things that you can't demonstrate.
Yeah, it's to me, it automatically reveals that person isn't interested in an honest conversation. They're interested in their one point, and they will not stray from it no matter what. And they're not valuing what is true. Because if you value what's true, then you're not afraid of the questions, and you're not afraid of, how they're answered. But he lost me when he cited a TikTok as his evidence. So
No, it wasn't TikTok. It wasn't? It was Tic Tac. It was something that was shaped like a Tic Tac that the Navy.
I understand. I was having a hard time following. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it was an unidentified aerial phenomenon. It used to be UFO. Now it's UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And the thing is that RAO thinks that he's identified the thing that the experts are labeling unidentified. And that's a problem. When you think you've falsified the unfalsifiable, when you think you've found that which
Right.
cannot be hidden, when you think you've identified that which is listed as unidentified, you have to do more than just say, well, it can't be this, so it must be that. Unless you
Yeah.
can show those are the only two options. But all right. We have other callers, and we have a theist here who you might have talked to yesterday. Chris is calling from
Yeah,
Puerto
we
Rico,
had
I
a really
believe.
hard time with audio stuff, so we had to end the call, actually.
Yeah. That's me.
So,
That's
yeah.
me. I hope that.
So,
Can you hear me?
Chris, hang on. It says here you want to talk about the practical
Hello?
objections. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yes, I can.
Okay. It says here that you want to talk about the practical objections to your religion, Christianity. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You're on with Promise and me.
Okay. I wanted to take on that previous comment you made regarding the Catholic Church. You called it a Christian organization. Can you explain that again?
I don't understand what you're asking. One more time.
You said previously the Catholic Church is a criminal organization. Can
Yes.
you explain that again?
Yes, when priests were raping children, the Catholic Church shuffled them around to new dioceses in order to avoid having them prosecuted in order to save face, and they paid millions of dollars in hush money with NDAs to keep people quiet rather than engaging in justice. They also took unwed mothers and stole their babies and put people in dangerous situations. The list of crimes by the Catholic Church is staggering, and you can look it up on Wikipedia and a dozen other sites.
Yes, I did have looked it up. And regarding the issues of sexual abuse, I find this quote from Ernie Allen, the director of National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And he said in an interview with Newsbook magazine, we don't see the Catholic Church as a hotbed of this or a place that has a bigger problem than anyone else regarding sexual
I'm sorry,
abuse.
Chris. I'm sorry, Chris, but what you're reading is someone making excuses for the Catholic Church, saying they're not the only criminal organization. And I agree. There are Baptist churches, Presbyterian churches, Methodist churches. There are plenty of other Christian churches and non-Christian churches that are in fact engaged in criminal activity. I would say that many of the Muslims that would you let me finish? I would also say that many of the Muslims I've debated who were advocating with sex with 4-year-olds are also in supporting criminal stuff. So your quote does not prove that the Catholic Church, your quote does not demonstrate that the Catholic Church is not a criminal organization. It just demonstrates it's not the only criminal organization.
What do you understand for criminal organization? An organization that commits crimes?
Chris,
or better said, an organization
Chris, I'm going to answer.
Yes.
Chris, I'm going to answer your question. If someone rapes a child, what should happen to them?
They should be arrested.
And if an organization hides them from the police so that they cannot be arrested and pays millions of dollars to silence the victims, is that criminal?
That's criminal, but that's not exactly
That's the Catholic Church. That's the Catholic Church. The case is closed.
For example, okay, a criminal organization will be a local.
No, Chris, I'm gonna ask you a couple quick questions, and then we're gonna either move on to something else. Okay? Are you aware that the Catholic Church hid priests who were guilty of abusing children? They hid them from prosecution. Are you aware that that occurred?
It has occurred in several cases, but also I would like to put back against the idea that there is
Chris, I'm asking yes or no questions. So you are aware that the Catholic Church acted in a way to hide priests from prosecution, correct?
There is a small problem here, and that is that you are saying.
When I say correct, just say yes or no. So you're aware that the Catholic Church took this. Never mind, Chris, never mind. I'm going to mute. Here are the facts. The facts are not in dispute. The Catholic Church sheltered priests from prosecution, which you have already acknowledged they've done, and that is criminal. So when I say they're a criminal organization, that's what I mean. I don't mean that they have been convicted of a crime, because they haven't been, because the Holy See is a nation state unto itself. But in any case, whether you want to think that the Catholic Church is a criminal organization or not, I don't give a fuck. If you think they're not criminal, you are wrong. My primary objection is to whether or not the claims are true. I don't find Catholicism to be true, and I find the Catholic Church to be repugnant, and I find you trying to make excuses for them to be incredibly vile. But I'm going to back off now so that you can say, oh, you were talking the whole time you were muted. Wow. Okay. Go ahead.
I am not making any excuses.
You are.
No, I am not. What I am saying is that a criminal organization, by definition, will need to have as primary goal the commit crimes. But that's most certainly not the case against the Catholic Church. And your claims do not explain why Ernie Allen.
Okay, I'm going to mute you. Nobody can hear you now. Nobody can hear you, so stop talking. Did the Catholic Church hide any guilty priest from prosecution? Yes or no?
Yes or no? What happens here is that you're asking a...
I'm sorry. What happens here is that I'm asking a yes or no question, and you are either too dishonest to answer yes or no, and I'm not going to let you say a word to rehabilitate your disgusting church until you answer my question. So, yes or no, has the Catholic Church hidden priests who are guilty of raping children from prosecution? Has that happened? Yes or no?
There has been such cases in which Catholic...
Okay. I'm going to ask you a different question. This one's going to be really easy. Are you able to say the word yes and the word no?
Yes, I am perfectly able, but...
Cool. Then when I unmute you in a second, the only word that should come out of your mouth is yes or no. Nothing else, nothing added to it. Yes or no. If you don't want to do that, you can hang up now and you won't get to speak anymore. But if you do it, you will then get to speak after that. So, for the final time, has the Catholic Church prevented rapist priests from being prosecuted? Yes or no?
In some cases, yes.
Goodbye. I'm sorry, promise.
Why couldn't you just answer the question? Like, that was, you ended with the yes. Why didn't you just start your answer with yes? Because that was the answer.
Yeah.
I can't imagine defending any of that. And it is a massive red flag to me when you're trying to brush under the rug some of the worst atrocities that people can commit. It's very disturbing.
This is what happens. This is what happens when criminal, corrupt, immoral, vile organizations poison the mind of people. They not only will not, with any willingness, acknowledge that that organization is vile and corrupt and criminal, that even when you pull teeth to get them to where they're finally willing to say yes. Well, in some cases, yes. You're just trying to soften it from the get-go. Here's the thing. One child should be enough to shut down the entire fucking organization, and they paid millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. $5 billion estimated in the United States in settlements to many people who were abused. How dare you try and tiptoe? Well, what's the definition of a criminal organization? Maybe what did they do that you think is criminal? I'll tell you what they did that I think is criminal. I think they shielded priests from prosecution. I think they obstructed justice. I think they hid their crimes. I think they paid billions of dollars in donations that came from you and people like you who think they're donating to something good instead of the fucking ghoul Mother Teresa and the people who won't let people wear condoms, increasing the prevalence of HIV/AIDS. I think you are supporting and making excuses for a vile, corrupt criminal organization, and fuck you for trying to avoid the question and defend it. You are disgusting, and you are just as guilty and complicit as every one of those priests. If you make excuses for them, we need to cue up Tim Minchin's The Pope song. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go.
And
Don't get us copyright
how many
claimed.
cases?
I'm not going to play it. I'm going to read the lyrics.
Well, and how many cases would make Chris care suddenly? At what point would Chris be willing to say? Is it when the organization covers up 5 cases? Does it have to be 500? How many kids have to be harmed in order for Chris to suddenly care about the harm an organization is causing?
I'm going to do the shortened version of this because I don't want to say fuck the motherfucker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 times in a row, which is how the song starts out. But he's basically talking about the Pope, and he says, and if you don't like the swearing that this motherfucker forced from me and reckon it shows moral or intellectual paucity, then fuck you, motherfucker. This is the language one employs when one is fucking cross about fuckers fucking boys. I don't give a fuck if calling the Pope a motherfucker makes you unthinkingly brand me an unthinking apostate. This has not to do with other fucking godly motherfuckers. I'm not interested right now in fucking spiritual debates. There are other fucking songs and there are other fucking ways. I'll be a religious apologist on other fucking days, but the fact remains, if you protect a single kitty fucker, then Pope or Prince or Plumber, you're a fucking motherfucker. If you build your church on claims of fucking moral authority and with threats of hell impose it on others in society, then you motherfuckers can expect some fucking wrath when it turns out you've been fucking us in our motherfucking asses. And if you look into your motherfucking heart and tell me true, if this motherfucking stupid fucking song offended you with its filthy fucking language and its fucking disrespect, if it made you feel angry, go ahead and write a letter. But if you find me more offensive than the fucking possibility that the Pope protected priests when they were getting fucking fiddly, then listen to me, motherfucker. This here's a fact. You are as morally misguided as that motherfucking power-hungry, self-aggrandized bigot in the stupid fucking hat. I am so sick of you Catholics with your poisoned brain defending a criminal organization. And no, yours isn't the only one. It's vile. All right. Well, we've run out of theist callers because I don't think they want to keep trying to defend the Catholic Church. Maybe we can get some Protestants in, but Caleb's calling from North Carolina. Pronouns are he, him. Caleb's an atheist who says, since the Bible has rules against rapists, does this mean that husbands can't rape their wives? Hey, Caleb, where is this question coming from?
Hey, Matt. Hey, Promise. So, like I said, I'm an atheist, thanks to you guys in part, over the past 6 years or so. I was having a debate with some of my friends yesterday about Deuteronomy 21, specifically verses 10 through 14. And at the very end of those verses there, it says, if you are not satisfied with her, you shall let her go free and not sell her for money. You must not treat her as a slave since you have dishonored her. So the debate was about, okay, the woman that, or the concubine or whatever, the Bible doesn't ever mention that she was a concubine. The sex could have been consensual. And I disagreed, and I said, okay, we're talking about, like in the case of the Amalekites, where the Israelites went in and slaughtered the lady's mother and father. You take her as a sex slave, or as a to keep her as your own, I should say, make her your wife, whatever. There's nothing there that would make me think that she is consenting. And what they said is, okay, rape is wrong because God has all of these laws against rape. Therefore, that would still be rape if she did not consent to the husband. And my argument was that rape is not even a concept for husbands and their wives in this particular time period. And I just wanted to see, you know, maybe where I could argue that point a little better, because they said, you know, where in the Bible do you find that it's not a concept?
Well, it would be hard to find it if it's not in there. I mean, the other issue here is we're assuming that these marriages are consensual right off the, like, that's already a wild thing to assume.
So that passage in Deuteronomy is about marrying the women that you captured from battle.
Right.
And so I would argue that giving modern understandings of consent, there can be no consent there.
Right.
There's a power dynamic, and one of them's a prisoner of war. And all it says is if you don't like her, you can't sell her. Because you've already defiled her, because the Bible has a thing about it. The Bible is pretty silent on any protections or limitations with regard to rape, other than if you rape a woman within the bounds of the city, then you stone the rapist and the rape victim to death because she didn't cry out loudly enough for anybody to catch them. And if you do it out in the country, then you don't stone the victim because nobody could hear her even if she cried. And if there's an unmarried virgin woman, I don't know how you tell, because virginity is a bullshit concept to begin with, but the very notion that these ancient Israelites were running around figuring out which of their captives or anybody else were virgins. But then he has to pay and is forced to marry his victim. And outside of that, there's really not much. So,
if I may,
what was
maybe
the point of disagreement?
Something? The point of disagreement wasn't necessarily the fact that it was a prisoner of war that had been taken. It was more on the fact of, my argument was, okay, there is no verse explaining that a husband raping his wife, there's no punishment for that. And
of course not. And until 1970, and until 1970s in the United States, it wasn't illegal.
Correct. And I brought that point up as well. And they said, well, you cannot prove that that was the law at the time.
So what? What difference does it make? Why isn't it the case that the all-knowing, all-powerful governor of the universe, when sending his message down, allows you guys to even have any sort of debate about what is and isn't permissible with regard to spousal sex?
I absolutely agree. They pointed to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 3-5, and claimed that it meant that the husband and wife are equal and that they both have to agree to postpone, sex or whatever.
No.
I didn't.
You can't go to 1 Corinthians and suggest that that's about equality, especially with those verses where verse 4 says the wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. I mean, that's not fucking equality. That's saying you belong to the husband. This is used to justify spousal rape.
Right. I was
Not
about to say
equality.
my problem with all of this is I know so many victims of marital rape. It's something that I don't like, marital coercion, whatever people want to call it. I don't think it gets talked about enough. And I didn't even grow up, in IBLP or something like that. I grew up, in the non-denominational evangelical world where that was still happening, and they were using the Bible to justify it, saying that once you're married, your bodies belong to each other. And so therefore that's already consent. Consent happens at the altar. Although they never even used the word consent because nobody was teaching me about consent growing up. That wasn't a thing because it's not in the Bible. And when they do talk about rape in the Bible, it's not in regards to consent, it's in regards to property and having your property destroyed.
Right. And that's why women are listed next to donkeys and other property.
Yep.
I completely
exactly.
agree, and I just didn't want to know if there's something that I'm missing here. I don't really have a good response to what they said when they said that I could not show that there is no proof of a concept that the husband. It was a common thing that the husbands would just have non-consensual sex with their wives. Because in their minds, that's still rape.
Can they show a verse where it was prohibited? And if
Right.
not, why not? It doesn't matter if you can show it happened. Ray Comfort tried this bullshit with me when I pointed out that the Bible says that the rapist should be forced to marry the victim. Ray correctly pointed out that it doesn't say the victim is forced to marry her rapist, but that he's forced to marry her. And the reason for that, the reason for Ray's little dishonest shuffle there is because women were property. So that, he's like, do you have any way of showing that anybody in the history of the world ever forced their daughter to marry the individual that raped them? And I based on these verses, and I was like, no, but why does that matter? Why is this a command in the first place? Whether or not anybody followed it, right. All you're saying is that there's no reason to think people are following what the Bible says. I already know that. Every motherfucker I ever sat in church with wasn't following what the Bible said. It's a matter of convenience. But where's the prohibition from the all-knowing, all-powerful God preventing people from sexually assaulting their partners or their prisoners of war?
If I was a God and I could know everything and I could see that someday there will be large times in history and then portions of the church that go on to continue to use the Bible to justify marital rape, I would address that really clearly in my book. I would make sure that there was something in there teaching about consent, not doing the opposite, which is where you present women as property and marriages as property exchanges and rape as property damage.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of it just comes down to when I would point these things out, they would say, well, that's Moses speaking, not God. So those aren't God's commands.
Really?
Moses has the free will to say that. Yes, that's what it came down to.
Okay, then everything in the Bible is not God's commands. It's some man saying something. When Moses comes down and delivers the 10 Commandments, that's just Moses. Maybe it took him 40 days to chisel those, but all of it's secondhand. There's not a single word that anybody's ever had from a God. So they're just making an excuse of convenience. If they're going to throw something out and say, oh, that's not God, that's Moses, so is everything else that's ever written in their Bible. Not Moses, but it's not God.
Tell him to call chewed gum, and I'd love to have that conversation with them.
These are, one of them is pretty newly converted into Christianity. He claims that he used to be an atheist. I would say it's probably like Matt, you say a lot, you can be an atheist for a bad reason. And I think that's essentially what got him to. I've since been removed as a friend. I don't know if that's something that's going to be patched up because of this conversation specifically. Apparently it was that offensive to them. But to me, it's just absolutely disgusting. Anybody could defend something like that. And I just, if that's what it's going to be, then, I accept that because I cannot defend this or, be comfortable with anybody who does defend it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you offered the pushback there. That sounds like it struck a nerve, as it should, because they should be bothered by how it was going. But yeah, I guess if they come back around, tell them there are other people that would love to have this conversation with them.
Right. I will definitely do that. I love the work you guys do. I've been listening for years. It's amazing. And thank you so much for all of it.
Thanks so much, Caleb.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Well, we lost the call I wanted to take.
We have so many people going off in the chat and nobody's calling in. They're too, I don't know. Maybe they know they won't do a good job.
Just wild. Yeah, there was somebody who was calling in to say, Matt, you were talking about LGBTQ stuff and it has nothing to do with being an atheist. Where do those roads cross? Correct. I'm not merely an atheist. I'm also a humanist. That's where they cross. I'm also a skeptic. That's also where they cross as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it definitely has a lot to do with religion as well, which we talk about all the time here. And nobody has a problem with us talking about religion when we're atheists.
Yeah. When their bigotry is rooted in their religious ideas, when either they're terrified of same-sex relationships intrinsically and using religion as a prop to make them feel more comfortable about their discomfort, or they're against it because of their religion. Either way, it's a problem. When religion is used to explicitly marginalize people who are doing nothing at all wrong but living their lives, then as an atheist, I have nothing to say, but as a humanist, I have fuck tons to say, because my atheism is just, I'm not convinced there's a God. And you know what? You can be not convinced there's a God, and you can still be a homophobe and a transphobe and a bigot. You can still be a racist. You can still be an idiot. You can be an anti-science person. You could be anti-vax. You could be RFK Jr., who, by the way, fuck you, RFK. People with autism can love, can have jobs, can pay taxes. And I don't know why I do know why that's the first thing out of your mouth, but my God, you're just, how do you live with yourself? This is the least qualified, least reasonable cabinet of individuals running the United States that anybody could imagine. It blows my mind. But yeah, I care about
Also
LGBT issues because I care about people. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but LGBT people are people.
Right. And there are atheists that are LGBT. The other thing, one could argue that as atheists, especially living in the US, we are having our rights threatened, our free speech and all of that. And what does history tell us? You should care about the rights of all if you want yours to be respected as well. So as an atheist, for me, that is another reason to care about the rights of any other human, because I want my rights as an atheist to also remain.
This is, I've been doing the call-in shows for about 20 years or so now. And I've been attending and speaking at conferences. I've spoken at quite a few American Atheist Conference. Spiritual Warfare just said, I'm not very skeptical, I'm biased. Call me Spiritual Warfare and show me exactly where my bias is on which topic. I dare you. I'll put you through next. Just tell the screener, you're the dumbass that accused me of bias and you'd like to defend it. And I'll put you through. But early on, when I first got involved with the movement, it was still, and it still is, predominantly white-bearded white dudes congratulating themselves for getting the right answer to the easiest question in the history of the world, which is, do I have good reason to believe in the supernatural? No. And early on, people were like, why aren't there more women involved? We know exactly why. We know a number of different reasons why there weren't as many women involved. But every time people would bring it up, it'd be mission drift. Hey, do we have enough, diversity in the atheist community? Do we have enough women? Do we have enough people of color? Do we have enough LGBT people? And every time people would bring that up, the panicked white-bearded white dudes would be like, oh, this is mission drift. This is mission drift. We should only be focused on God and the fact that God is being, yes. And people made the case for all the reasons and everything else. And it was really simple. Religion has not met its burden of proof. None of them. Religions generally, while they can be used to do good things and make people do good things are in fact harmful and antithetical to freedom. They marginalize and further marginalize groups. I got news for you. People who aren't the same skin tone as you are still people. People who don't have the same gender identity that you have, still people. People who have a romantic or sexual interest or a lack thereof for either, for people that you don't have those interests for, are still people. And this is why, this is the earth-shattering realization that as a humanist, those of us who have the ability to work to make sure that we don't further marginalize people and instead start eliminating that marginalization, I think have a moral obligation to do so. There are other people who don't think they have a moral obligation to do so. And there's some that just don't want to do it, whether they have that obligation or not. And you know what? It's okay. I'll pick up a little extra slack for some of you while you figure out why you're fucking up. All right. Ooh. Here we go. Jason's calling from, is it Minnesota? He runs or he grew up with the satanic panic and lost contact with my extended family. Matt, as your mom is religious, how do you maintain a relationship with your parents and still stand up for what you believe in? We don't talk about that stuff anymore, Jason. That's how.
Okay. Yeah. See, so that's kind of the route I have been going. We just don't talk about it. But the more I had a son, so I'm now a parent, and started thinking about this stuff a lot more seriously, and realized that whether intentional or not, I was psychologically abused as a child, being told about demons and angels, stuff that terrified me. And it's just really hard to navigate. I want to keep a relationship with my parents, but they're still, as you could guess, big Trumpers now, still big Christians. When you believe nonsense, it's easy to believe other nonsense. And I really want to maintain a relationship with them, but it's just really hard to know what I know and to be so really against what they believe. So how do you navigate that? Is that just don't talk about it?
Promise probably has different answers than I do.
Yeah.
We have different families.
Yeah. So my family, they're not only all the things you've described, Trumpers and very religious. They have a very large, semi-well-known ministry. And all of my siblings almost all of my siblings work for them and their spouses, and they're fully in it. And for a while there, I did end up needing to go no contact. And that was a really good choice because I did not have the emotional tools, nor did they, to handle our differences in our relationship and figure out how to properly set boundaries and how to stick to them and what they should even be. And so the other thing is, for all the batshit stuff that they believe, unlike some of their peers that I'm quite sure are absolutely lying for different reasons, and I have the inside scoop. I know how much they believe this stuff and how indoctrinated they are, because this is a generational ministry. And so they also are pretty emotionally healthy compared to, honestly, most people I know. So I knew there was a chance that things could work out. So I took a year off of contact. I went to therapy. I put in the work. I said, look, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. And that ended up being really good. I'm not saying that's what you need to do. I do highly recommend therapy for anybody that has religious trauma like that, because that is what you're describing as religious trauma. And I was then able to be clear-headed enough to make the choice on what kind of interactions I wanted to have with my family, what kind of boundaries, what I can handle, and all of that. And it's been good so far. But part of that was having to grieve them and to basically mourn the family that I thought I was going to have, the relationships I thought I would have with them. And a lot of therapy was actually grief therapy and learning how to do that. So that's something I also would encourage you. I got a book about grieving, and that was really helpful. so I think a big part is grieving who they were, because that allowed me to then set up, okay, what am I okay to have with them now? Because also, like you're saying here, how do you still stand up for what you believe in? If they say something that goes against my values, I will say something, and they know that. Do I think that that makes them say less now? Probably. But also, many times they've said something and they have now been open to me saying something back, because I have the tools to remain calm and have the conversations. And it's actually been really cool to see them being more welcoming, accepting, and loving of things that they just didn't know something about. They needed to be educated. They needed to be informed about it because of their indoctrination, just like somebody had to do that for me. Do I think that they're going to like change their minds and end their ministry? Probably not. They literally couldn't afford to do that. But I do think it's still important that I can have that sort of relationship, or else I probably wouldn't have it at all. If I couldn't speak up and say something, if something, bigoted is said, then I would probably just continue the no contact. But we're in a place where I can do that, and they listen, and it works. So sorry, that was a lot, but hopefully something in there.
No, that is amazing. That was so helpful. I didn't know any of that about your background. That's very inspiring, and I really needed to hear that. I wasn't looking at it that way, and that is amazing. So thank you so much for sharing. That's great.
Yeah, of course. And it's interesting because I also get a lot of pushback and a lot of people that are like, well, you should cut them off and you should never speak to them again. That's a privilege to be able to do, because one of the things we lose when we walk away from religion is oftentimes community and family. And so if I can maintain that, also be kind of like somebody that helps them get out of their echo chamber, and it's not negatively impacting my mental health, and generally it's making it better. My sisters and I have been very close, obviously our whole childhood, the way we grew up. There still are some shared values there that we can connect on. So I totally get it. And that's your choice to make, what you are comfortable letting go of and what you really do want to maintain and hold on to. So, if you get pushback, just know that it's your choice, and you're the one that has to live with the consequences of it either way. It's not up to other people.
I'll tell you.
And just hearing, sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Just hearing that it's possible to still to have a relationship like you do, hearing that was golden to me. So.
Yeah. And listen, that could change. Like next week I could get back here and be like, they crossed the line like this, but so far, all systems are go. My mom is so sweet, and she tries to find the ways to support. She'll say, I'll support you. I don't want to necessarily support what you're doing, because of course it's completely contradicting what they're doing. But she even, she knew I was at a speaking event this weekend and took me shopping to get the appropriate outfit for it. They're trying. If they weren't showing that this is a two-way relationship, then I would advise stepping back from that. But if your family is, also willing to work together to maintain a relationship, then I think it could be worth it.
Great. Thank you.
My family is, I remember Dan Barker talked about after he became an atheist, he talked to his parents and eventually converted his parents to where they're atheists as well. I not only don't have any hope of that with my parents, I would be like, it would almost be so miraculous it would prove God if they were to stop believing. But my mom, after agreeing to not, after we had some initial conversations, she sent me an email that she wrote that started with, from a mother's love, and went into great detail about how she wouldn't lie to me and Jesus is real. And she had all the same doubts and questions, and I'm just like her, but Jesus fixed it all. And it's not remotely true. My mother, despite thinking that she's an incredibly logical person, is in fact the exact opposite. I don't mean that in any rude way or anything else. She thinks flawed thinking and fallacies, and it's just constant. That's independent of whether or not somebody's smart or not. But I wrote an email back, and I I decided, okay, I'm sick of this. I'm going to treat this as if it's just any random person emailing me and it's not my mom. And I went through it line by line and was like, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is bullshit, and this is bullshit, and this is immoral, and this is immoral, and boom, 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 boom. And I clicked send. I didn't proofread it or nothing. And when I sent it, I thought I kind of ended my relationship with my mom. And that's when she came back with the, I had those same concerns, but Jesus fixed it all. And then we agreed. Well, no, we didn't agree. She announced that Dad had forbidden her to ever talk to me about this subject again. And I made the point that if I didn't already despise their religion, the fact that my dad can forbid my mom to talk to me about anything would absolutely make me despise their religion. And I don't know to what extent that rung a bell, but we had one more conversation, started about Trump. It lasted 6 or 8 hours when I was visiting them.
Wow.
And this was back in 2016, 2017, something like that. And that was the last conversation we had about anything remotely like that. And I don't expect we will have any conversations about that in the future. It is, hey, how's the weather? Here's what's going on with the car. How's, doing some projects around the house. How's your health? Okay, love you. See you later. Bye. I haven't seen my mom in person since before COVID. Not because we're estranged. It's just there hasn't been the time and money and opportunity to actually go up there and do it. There's so much other stuff going on. But I don't think there'll ever be any conversations like that. And at this point, given how they've gone in the past, I think it's probably better to just keep it like platonic and pedestrian and, weather-based conversations for the rest of their lives. Because anything deeper than that makes the relationship worse. But my scenario isn't the same as Promise's, isn't the same as yours. The only thing I recommend is you don't owe anybody an explanation for who you are, what you think, or what you believe at all, ever. And you have to get comfortable drawing boundaries. Whether you remove yourself for a while you go through some therapy and reboot, or if you say, nope, I'm going to stop having contact with you for a bit until something changes, or if you end it entirely, you got to draw the boundaries that make sure that you are protecting you and your life and the people around you. And you don't need a toxic influence in your life just because you happen to be related to somebody by blood. For me, your family, if you act like family, something I got from Jen, one of my former co-hosts. And I'm fortunate that my brother is genuinely my favorite person ever, and we're thick as thieves. I have other family members that are blood relatives, and I have family members who are not related to me at all by blood, or not in any sense like that. And then there are people that I'm related to by blood that I wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. All right, I probably would.
That's great. Yeah. And I mean, even if it ends up at the end of it that all we do is talk about surface things, that would be fine. I feel like, and this is probably something like Promise said, I should probably talk to a therapist about, but I feel like there's stuff that I need to tell them about what I believe, that there's just something that feels wrong about me not having proclaimed to them what I know as an adult. And I think once I get that out of the way, if it ends up that's a surface relationship, that's fine. But it's just something that I need to work through.
I'll throw this at you because I had that feeling as well. But part of what therapy helped me with is letting go of that need, because that ended up being, and it might not be the case for you, that ended up being an internal thing that I needed to deal with and confront, that wasn't going to go away even if I told them those things. I did need to find an outlet, which here I am. This has been a pretty good outlet for that. But there are so many things that I still will never say to them, and maybe won't say to anybody publicly, that I am upset about or have problems with from my childhood or things like that. And I am okay if they never hear those things. I truly was able to face those things without having to bring them in on that. And in fact, in some ways, I think it helped me heal faster, because I think the response, even though I know what it would be, I think the response would still have been so painful. And then there's another thing to work through. So that's just throwing that out there. Another thing for you to consider. I definitely think that you shouldn't stop yourself if you end up still feeling that way. But you might want to, have that be something you bring up with another, with a professional to help you sort that through, because part of that need to even say those things or, fill them in or whatever might end up causing more damage moving forward. Maybe it won't, but just throwing that out there is something you might want to consider.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great advice. Thank you both so much for all you do. I really appreciate your time, and this was very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for calling, Jason. Wishing you the best of luck with all of that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got some theists calling in, and that's great. Hopefully we'll get somewhere. We've got Diana's calling from New York. Diana says she was an atheist and became faithful because of the AA program. By that, I'm assuming you mean Alcoholics Anonymous and not American Atheists?
No, I'm talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was in my time in the Navy, I was enrolled in it because I had a huge drinking problem, and it really helped me return to the faith.
What about AA convinced you that God was real?
Well, you have to give the whole point about giving up to a higher power. It really is releasing when you have to realize there's so much in the universe you can't control, and I think that's a large reason why. Especially when you're out on a naval boat, having to just see the ocean, the sights of the world, and how different everything is. It really put a lot of things in perspective.
Your mic is clipping a little at the top end, so if you can just hold the phone or mic just slightly further away from your mouth is fine.
Okay.
So I can certainly understand, finding concepts within, AA in a program useful, even though I'm completely opposed to AA. I think they lie. They do not publish their recidivism rates. If anybody goes back to drinking, the program didn't fail. You failed the program. And I think they make people dependent on working the program. But also I know that there are atheists who go to AA who, when their higher power, they pick something else. And so if an atheist can go to AA and pick something not a God as their higher power, and you pick a God as your higher power, how do we tell whether you're right or the atheist is right?
Well, I guess that's a good question, because at the end of the day, I'm sure it does take a little bit of willpower and some of the internal thing to fully get over it. But I think the difference between the atheist and the atheist is the fact that there is something to give up their power to, whether it's in their head or not. That's just a thing that you can utilize. I mean, I used to be making bush mountains. I used to work in a brewery. I didn't have the easiest time in the 80s. And once I enrolled in the Navy and I got everything in order, it was just a whole different world. But it could be part of the discipline.
I did 8.5 years in the Navy as well. I don't know that, I was a believer when I went in and had no religious preference. I was a fundamentalist Christian when I went in the Navy. I had no religious preference when I came out, but I was still a believer, and then an atheist later. My only concern about the God question is it true? Not does the God, does believing provide comfort? And so are you convinced that God is real based on some evidence, or are you convinced that it feels good or is beneficial to believe God is real?
Well, do you believe DNA is real?
Yes.
I think it's a pretty similar question.
But that
no,
wasn't
it's not.
Matt's question, though. Why can't we just answer Matt's question?
We have sequenced the entire genome. We know for a fact that DNA is real. I'm asking you whether or not God is real, or whether you believe that belief in God is useful.
I mean, if that was true, we wouldn't have alcoholism anymore. We would have figured out how to get rid of that gene already.
No, because first of all, the fact that someone is or could be alcoholic doesn't mean that it's necessarily a genetic thing. And even knowing that it may be genetic doesn't in any way mean that we could solve that. There are plenty of other things that are genetic that we don't necessarily have solutions for. So everything about your premise is faulty. And at this point, I'm starting to seriously disbelieve you as I keep asking you whether or not you have good reason to believe God is true or that God is useful. And you keep coming up with distractions and deflections that are almost on a par with the kindergarten level theology of you can't see DNA and you can't see God, therefore they're equal. So for the last time, do you have reason to believe that God is real, or are you just comforted by the God concept?
I have a reason to believe God is real.
Cool. What is it?
When I was in New York one time, in my worst portion in life, I had to go to a church's chicken, and I only had a few $100s to my name, and I was mugged.
Okay. I'm sorry. I paused you for a second. So you were in New York and you were mugged for a couple $100 at a church's fried chicken.
Yes.
What's that have to do with God?
Well, the fact that I wasn't killed that day shows that God's real.
Okay. I don't believe you. Diana, goodbye. I'm not going to let you sit here and insult everybody's intelligence and pretend like you're a genuine theist offering an explanation when I can hear you start to laugh in the background. I don't believe a word you said. You're another prank calling web caller. I'm sorry out there for anybody who thinks Diana was getting ready to give us some great exposition. Please start rethinking your life choices, because there are people here who believe things like this for really bad reasons, and I'd like to be able to help them. And if it turns out I'm the one that's wrong, I'd like for those people to be able to help me, because I care about what's true and I care about what is beneficial. And there are people who genuinely, and fuck you, Diana, for doing this, genuinely go through substance abuse programs and find themselves having to rely on some sort of deity or deity concept. And for some, it can be, well, there's just something out there. And for some, it gets more specific. The issue at hand is there are people really struggling. And if something, whether it's a religion or not, offers them a friendly hand and a smile and a little bit of help, that concept can help them and then falsely bolsters that religious view such that it takes up a sheltered position in their mind. It is incredibly rude and pretty despicable for you to pretend to be one of those people, to use them as a prop either for your amusement or to mock them. If you're an atheist doing this, try to learn some humanism and stop being a shitty person. And if you're a theist doing it, learn how to defend what it is that you actually believe. And if you're just a punk ass making prank calls, thanks for giving us more engagement and making us money, but I'd rather get it from people who actually give a shit and who aren't just calling to hear themselves speak. Let's try this again.
Well said.
Rich, my apologies for making you wait through a fake call. Rich is a theist in, is it Massachusetts, I guess? Pronouns are him. Wants to give a best illustration for the existence of God somewhat intelligently. Well, that would be a huge improvement. Welcome, Rich. How are you?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I appreciate you condemning that knucklehead, whoever it was, because, you know, you guys are getting some people that act as theists that really have, I just don't know how they have any business even trying to represent the theist viewpoints. But, you know, clearly you're a professional debater, and I'm not going to hold a candle to you when it comes to that. I'm not throwing in the white flag just yet.
I'll just be quiet.
But yeah, I appreciate that. But here's where I'm coming from. So, before we can even get into discussion of Jesus and Christianity and so many other topics, whether these things actually happened or didn't happen, you got to go back to the basics, to the very beginning, which is creation, right? And so, the example that I've heard and that makes the most sense to me when it comes to creation is basically like this type of an example, okay? When you look at a building, okay, and I know you've heard this 100 times, you know that somebody actually built that building. When you look at a painting, that's evidence that that painting was created by an artist, right? And so when we look at, all of creation, the worlds, the planets, the solar system, everything on this planet Earth, and we look at people and we look at animals and everything else, it's hard to say from an atheist point of view that this was all created from nothing, or nobody created everything that we see, right? In my opinion.
Yeah, we don't say that it was created by nothing. But I know artists. I know people that build houses. We have evidence of those things. So that's not a good comparison at all.
Well, so I wasn't done yet. So, the evidence that the world and the planet was created by someone or something or an entity, that's not good evidence?
I haven't heard evidence yet. What are you saying is evidence of that?
Looking around, the fact that we're standing on planet Earth, that we have trees and we have planets in the solar system and the sky.
It's evidence of planets. It's evidence of human beings. I'm waiting for the part where we get to the evidence that there is a creator.
So what other possible solution would you have of something or someone that created all of these things? What other possible evidence would anyone have that it was not made by a creator? That's the point I'm getting at.
There is no evidence that it was made by a creator. So until we know how the universe came to be, then I'm not interested in saying, well, let me just sit here. And to me, it sounds like maybe this is a thing it could be. I need evidence, because then I could just say, oh, I think it was a pink sparkly unicorn that, blew a kiss and it all came to be, because, why not?
Okay, so let's go back a little further in time. For example, the pyramids. When they built the pyramids, did they leave one stone aside and say this was created by, Pharaoh, whatever, and these 620 slaves that created this pyramid? No, they didn't do that. The evidence was that they were in Egypt. They were created by Egyptians, and they were created at some point in time in history, right? The same thing with Hanging Gardens of Babylon or whatever else it could be.
We're doing the same thing. You're doing the same thing already. This is a fallacy. You're just pointing back to, well, this thing has a creator, this thing has a creator. We have evidence of those things and their sources.
And so,
do you have evidence of any supernatural? Right? Is there any evidence of a supernatural being that created stuff?
Well, the evidence is in the creation itself. In my opinion.
Rich, you don't get to call something a creation. You have to demonstrate that it is a creation. I will agree with you, the universe exists. Whether or not it is a creation or not still remains to be proven. How did you rule out the notion that the universe exists for purely natural reasons, or that with Big Bang cosmology, time begins at the expansion, and prior to that, everything was merely a singularity? So in order for you to say something is a creation, you have to show that it is. You don't just get to call it a creation and then say it had a creator. Just like if you find paint somewhere, you don't get to call it a painting and say that it had a painter. we recognize design by contrasting it with things that are not designed, things that occur naturally. If you're walking down a creek and you see a bunch of sticks blocking up the creek, you can ask yourself, ooh, did that occur naturally as a result of a flood, or is that something created, like by a beaver? And then you would go out and investigate to see which of those it has the hallmarks of. We have exactly one universe. We have nothing to compare it to. We have no way of traveling back in time. We have no way of investigating prior to the Big Bang. And so you don't get to say this is a creation, therefore it had a creator. You have to demonstrate that it is a creation. And you don't get to say, we have to prove it's not a creation, because that's a shifting of the burden of proof.
So you make a great argument, but I have to believe that, you know, when we look at something that was created, right, like a building, like a painting, like a house, whatever the case might be, that is enough evidence to say that somebody built that. You don't need to look up.
Rich, listen, no. You know that buildings are built by people because all of the evidence for every building is that they are built by people, and there is no evidence of buildings occurring by natural processes that don't involve that. So you have not just that building, you have every other building. You have the process of construction. You have the plans, the blueprints that are on there. You have a fuck ton of evidence that buildings are created and designed and built by people, and you have zero evidence that buildings occur naturally. When it comes to the universe, you have no other universe to compare it to. You have no way of showing whether or not the universe occurred naturally or the universe was constructed. I agree with you that when you look at a building, you know that it had a builder, but not just because you looked at the building. That is what the lie that we tell ourselves by failing to recognize that our brains have accumulated massive evidence. And it's the same thing if somebody says, I just got a pet puppy. We know that puppies exist. We know people keep puppies as pets. It's completely unremarkable that they have a pet puppy. If somebody says, I just got an invisible pet dragon, now you don't have supporting evidence. So their claim alone is not enough. For the universe, you do not get to say it is analogous to a building until you have 50,000 universes that you can compare and show which of them were created and which of them occurred naturally.
Yeah, you can only turn to whatever sort of evidence, and I see your point, and there will be, I don't know that even in the next 2,000 years or 5,000 years that anyone is going to be able to produce.
Then why do you believe before the evidence warrants it? You shouldn't believe something until the evidence warrants it. And if you're saying we might not know for thousands of years, then you shouldn't reach a conclusion for thousands of years.
Yeah. So, you know, absent God coming again, which which many theists believe he did in Jesus Christ and had witnesses and so forth and so on. And God came again, right? So absent of that evidence.
No, but Rich,
absent of that evidence, there's nothing that we can attribute to God. There's no way.
I'm muting you, Rich. You're not listening and you're not thinking, and Promise has something to say.
Rich, here's the problem. There's so many natural things that we have in the past, because we didn't have enough information and we decided we really needed an answer. Some of us would make up answers. So with like thunder and lightning, we would attribute that to gods and say it was gods doing that because we didn't understand how lightning worked. We would do this about diseases. I believe it was epilepsy. People up until recently believed that was demonic possession, which that means a lot of people were harmed because instead of having a very real natural medical condition addressed, they were locked up and treated as though they had demonic possession. That's the harm with saying, oh, it must be something supernatural because I don't understand how it could be anything else. That's very arrogant of us. And then we don't get to actually figure out what the real natural cause is.
Yeah, it's a very strong argument that I don't know that any apologist, any Christian apologist, any theist could ever have enough evidence to sway a theist And I understand your point. So why believe it unless you have absolute concrete hard evidence and proof? I understand your point. And you can't do that, without some bit of credibility and faith, right? The two have to go together.
Rich. You got almost there, and then you started making excuses. You said, "Oh, I understand that you shouldn't believe without good evidence, but you can take it on faith." No, faith is the excuse people give for believing things when they don't have a good reason. Is there any position, right or wrong, that someone couldn't believe and justify by saying it's a faith-based position?
Scientifically and evidence alone, absolutely not. There has to be, you have to have a certain amount of faith with whatever evidence.
No, I'm sorry, Rich, you're not even fucking listening. Is there any position? Could someone say white people are better than black people? That is my faith-based position.
No.
You're so full of shit. Of course they could. Of course they could. I didn't say it made it true. You have to, Rich, you have to listen and think, and you're not. Anybody could believe anything based on faith, correct?
Sure.
That means that faith is not a reliable path to truth or reliability, correct?
Yes.
If faith is not a reliable path to truth, then when we talk about what is the explanation for the existence of the universe, people should not be appealing to faith because that does not lead reliably to a correct answer, right?
Agreed. There's no one who's going to win an argument.
Then this isn't about winning an argument, Rich. Please get that out of your head and listen. You've already lost the argument, and so has every theist that's come before you. I'm trying to get you to stop thinking about it in terms of argument. I'm trying to get you to think about it in terms of, do I have good reason to believe it's true? And so the question is, if we set aside your faith, which we already know isn't a good reason, do you have some other good reason to believe that there is a God that made the universe?
My good reason is probably not good enough for you because it's in reverse Rich, in the evidence.
Rich, it is shocking. It's actually not shocking because I've done this for 20 years to watch your brain do the gymnastics that you're doing right now. The question was, do you have a good reason? That's a yes or no question, which you can then follow up with what the good reason is. And then we can discuss whether or not I agree that it's a good reason. I'm willing to bet beforehand that you don't have a reason that I will find good. And I'm willing to bet a sizable amount of money that I can explain what's wrong with your reasoning, just as I've done every other time you've engaged in fallacious reasoning. So all I need to know is, what do you think is a good reason that is not faith-based to believe that there is a being that created the universe?
I can't believe that creation was not made by an intelligent creator. That everything that we see around us.
Why can't you believe that, Rich? What is making you unable to believe anything other than that?
Because everything is just too perfect to be left up to chance and to say that no one created everything that we know and see. It had to be an intelligent, hyper-intelligent, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, it had to be a hyper-intelligent being that created all of this. Everything, the mechanics of the way everything aligns perfectly just seems to point to a creator.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's my evidence. That's enough. That's enough for me, but it may not be enough for everyone.
That's not evidence. That's your perception of the universe. But tell me why there are so many things with our body. Why is when I'm drinking or breathing or eating, why is there a large chance that I can choke and die? That wasn't very intelligent at all. Also, why did this God decide it's so inefficient? Why do I have to stop and eat a certain amount of times a day and get a certain amount of nutrition? Like, why didn't he make us self-sustaining? Why am I gonna die if I go drink ocean water? You know, there's so many things right off the top of my head I can think of that are not intelligent at all. And if I were designing the latest model of humans, there's a ton of things I would change that would already just make more sense.
The other thing is, when you say your good reason is that you can't believe that creation was not made by an intelligent creator. Well, first of all, you haven't proven or demonstrated, and you don't have any reason to believe that it is a creation. But the fact that you personally can't believe something is not a good reason to believe something else. That is literally the fallacy of an argument from personal incredulity. So you have a fallacious argument. And then when you talk about how everything's designed perfectly, Douglas Adams has a great little analogy about a puddle of water that finds itself there. But we are the sort of thing that evolved given this universe. If the universe had been different, something else may have evolved. Maybe nothing would have evolved. Maybe something with different intelligence, maybe whatever. But it is absolutely arrogant and ridiculous and fallacious for you to assume that you were the goal of the universe or a God, and therefore, because the universe suits you so well, it must have been created for you. When the non-arrogant thing is to understand the science of the diversity of life that shows we are all, in fact, related, and that we are what can evolve under these circumstances, and to stop thinking that you're special, when in fact you are another flawed thinking, fallacious being that presumes God must have made it all for you. I just can't believe it was chance. Well, tough. That ain't evidence. That's not a reason. It is a parade of fallacies that is rooted in your arrogance and ignorance.
Rich, also, I'd like to point out that I think you are capable of that sort of thought, because so you said the reason is because you think the universe is what, complex and perfect and well designed. Would you say that God, the creator, if there was a God, the creator, was perfect and complex and all of those same things?
I would.
Great, but you're comfortable without attributing a creator to that God. You're okay with that. You're all right to sit back and say, oh, he always was, or whatever it is that you believe about God. So you're perfectly capable of sitting back and letting something that you perceive as complex and perfect and all of that exist without a creator. You are capable of that.
A creator of God himself?
Correct.
What Thomas just said is, you said you can't believe the universe exists without a creator because it's so complex. And then you said God is more complex, but you're happy to believe that God wasn't created, which means you can believe that something that complex wasn't created. That is, unless I have missed it, that is Promise's argument.
That's 100% correct.
It's a good argument. And I can't respond to that. I can tell you just what was, what I came in here with, my position of what I felt was sufficient evidence to me.
Well, then
and it may not be
sufficient
evidence to everyone, obviously.
But Rich, I think you're approaching this from the wrong angle. I don't think this should be about. Oh, sorry, Matt, you were cutting out on my end, so I don't know what you were saying. But
no. Go ahead, finish.
I think that you should go back and think if you care that what you believe is true or not. That should be what you care about, not about having a good argument to respond to Matt and I, because Matt and I aren't sitting here like, well, let me make the very best argument for atheists. We are able to just sit here and be honest in our answers and in our conversation back and forth. Yes, we're hoping to communicate well, but this isn't about like, oh, we're going to win an argument. So I think you should sit with that, think about some of these things that we've brought up, and think about if you care if what you believe is really true or not, and if you have good reasons. I understand that currently you think that you have good reasons, but you shouldn't have good arguments. That shouldn't be your goal. You should have good reasons.
Yeah. One thing real quick in addition to what Promise was asking you to do, which is to ask yourself if you care whether or not your beliefs are true, you should ask whether or not you care more about whether they're true or whether or not they're comforting. But the other aspect of this is, you made something that said, oh, those are my reasons. They may not be good enough for everybody. Here's an important question. If something is true, shouldn't the good reasons to believe it be the same for everybody?
Wow. If something is true, then yes. If something is true, then yes, everyone should be able to see that truth and believe it the same way. You're right.
And so take that into consideration when you ask yourself, do you care about whether it's true? And do you have good reasons? If you keep coming up with reasons that you recognize aren't good enough for other people, wouldn't that suggest that suggests one of two things? Either you are accepting things for bad reasons, or the other people are unwilling to accept good reasons. Either of those could be the case. And if you recognize that there are people that these aren't going to be good enough reasons for, then there's reasons why we have standards of evidence. There's reasons why courtrooms have standards of evidence. There's reason why science has standards of evidence. And it's so that we can eliminate our personal biases as best as possible. And so if you are accepting evidence that other people find weak, you got to figure out whether or not that's because it's your personal bias, which, by the way, the second you said, I can't believe that creation wasn't created by a creator, you are exposing your bias. I can't believe that it was, but I'm not incapable of believing that it was. If someone were to demonstrate that it was, I would accept it. But the burden of proof is on the people who are claiming it was created by a creator.
You made great points, and I'm sorry that I called in when you were on the show, Matt, because I'd probably rather take my medicine from poison and from promising someone else. But I'll leave it there. Thank you for enlightening me and giving me a little bit more to think about. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're doing it in good faith, and I hope that you know that my intentions were also in good faith and not trolling or anything else.
Yeah, no, we're good, Rich. I just,
enjoyed the conversation.
You are not thinking about things as clearly as you might suspect, and it's easier for me to see that, having seen it hundreds of times before, and that's why I maybe know some of the questions to ask. But if it turns out, Rich, that you have good reasons and we've overlooked them, and you have reasons that anybody should reasonably accept, definitely call back and present them, because I'd like to know if I'm wrong. And if you learn something else or come up with a different way to phrase stuff that you think might be a good reason, I'm happy to know that too.
Thank you both. Appreciate you having me on.
Yep. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
We
if you're
got a
just
bunch
listening, we're constantly looking for theist callers over on Chewed Gum. We don't get enough of those, and you're welcome to call back over there if you want to think about some of the stuff we talked about, and you have more questions or another argument to bring up. Would love to have you call over there.
We got a bunch of theist callers, so let's just start at the top. Alan's a theist calling from Tennessee. Pronouns are he, him, says he had an experience and he hasn't shared it with anyone and would like to share it with us. So, hey, Alan, how are you? You're on with me and Promise.
I'm great. So I was out in my backyard up under this tree. I always go under, and I go under it, and I sit there and I talk to Zeus and, Amon, whatever. But I was up there that day and I was just sitting there breathing and meditating, really focusing. And there's a big overcast. And it was close. It was basically nighttime. It was like the sun had already basically went down, and there might have been a moon. I don't know. There's some illumination, and I seen this stuff coming down out of the cloud, and it looked almost like a vapor or something, or an ether field, how gas turns into vapor in the air and you see it, but it was going straight up, and it was pretty big. and it was going straight up into the clouds. I thought maybe it might have been like some type of EMF emergence or something like from the EMF fields, but it wasn't. And I was just sitting there watching it, and then all of a sudden, this thing come into view like it was invisible, and then it turned visible, and it was huge. It kind of looked like a tree, but it didn't have like limbs, like limbs like a tree or anything. And if you know what a huntsman spider looks like, it you know the little spots on the huntsman spider's legs. That's what it looked like. It looked like a giant freaking tree, and it was moving, and it looked like it had those little spikes on it, like a huntsman tree.
You sure you weren't watching Stranger Things?
Yeah. No, I wasn't watching Stranger Things. It was very strange. And then I thought maybe it was like, at first I was like, it might be my eye. Something's wrong with my eye. But then it disappeared again, and these like lights flickered in the air, and I watched it, and it went real fast, like to this other spot, and disappeared like for half a second, and then it lit up huge, like almost like a perfect circle of light, and then all you hear is like a sonic boom. Like if you've watched the Superman movie, when Superman's in the air and he starts going real fast and it goes, well, there was that noise when it made that light, and the clouds.
Or supersonic airplanes. I don't think we have to go to fantasy over it. Jason, whatever you saw, what was it, and how do you know what it was?
I don't know what it was, but
then why, Jason? Why are you calling to tell me something that you don't know what it was, and I have no way of investigating it? Promise has no way of investigating. Why are you talking while I'm still asking the question? I'm trying to understand. I'm not going to let you fucking finish. Shut up.
Well, that's kind of rude, but okay.
Yeah. You know what else is rude? Repeatedly interrupting me after I fucking call it out. I was sitting here saying, I'm trying to understand, Jason. You're calling to tell us about an experience you had that we can't investigate. And I don't know what to do with that. And I don't understand why. So I was asking you to clarify why, so that you could explain why you're calling to tell me this thing that you don't understand. But you kept fucking interrupting. And when I called you out for it, you called me rude. So fuck off. I'm going to take a different call.
I would have interrupted Jason sooner if Jason thinks that's rude, but that was already a lot, and I had the same question. What are we supposed to do with this story? Regardless of how it ends, what are we supposed to do with it? We're trying to save everybody some time.
So William's calling from Florida. William's a theist who's a pantheist, and the pantheist belief is supported by the Bible? Okay. William, I don't care whether something's supported by the Bible. I care whether it's supported by the facts of reality. So welcome to the show. How do you justify pantheism without the Bible?
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm clearly frustrated and trying to get answers to questions. Have you got any?
I think the screener made a mistake. I'm not a pantheist. I'm a panentheist.
Okay.
Panentheist.
I know the difference. So what? It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. So the idea that I can share with you can be falsifiable. And if the God of the Bible is indeed described as the container of the universe, and his essence is also light, and there's a boundary between him and the universe, that idea can either be validated or falsified. I strongly think.
How?
I will get into that. I strongly think that if
I don't need anything else. I need you to show that what you just said is true.
The Microsoft Azure team just recently made a discovery that, and you can Google this, and
Okay, I've muted you. I need to breathe for a minute here, William. When someone says they're a panentheist, which means that everything is God, God is the universe and everything beyond, and that the Bible supports that, I'm not convinced that those two things are compatible or not. But when I ask how you can demonstrate it, and the first words out of your mouth have something to do with Microsoft, we're off to a bad start. So let's try this again. How can you demonstrate that panentheism is true?
Well, okay. Because if God is described as light in the container of the universe, then the CME might be the best evidence we might ever have.
Okay, William, I swear I'm not trying to be a dick, but you're going to piss me off here. You don't get to say that an idea is testable and falsifiable. If this, then this. You can't demonstrate the if or the if connection. Do you have a way right now to provide an evidence-based confirmation of panentheism, yes or no?
I mean, in all honesty, Matt, I'm trying, but I can't really.
That's a yes or no. You said if God is described as light. Well, what on earth?
Yes,
hang on. Listen, you said if God is described as light. Why should I give a shit if somebody describes God as light? If somebody describes God as light, does that mean God is light? How do you know whether God is light? Why does it matter if someone described God as light? None of those things are connected.
Well, I mean, if we got to start with a proposition. And
No, you don't. Okay, if God is jism, then God lives in my scrotum. How useful is that? That's what I thought.
I don't think it.
So we're cranking through these theist callers at an incredibly rapid pace. If you're sitting around going, oh, I'm a panentheist because I read somewhere somebody described God as light, and therefore I can draw a line to this other thing, and light is real, therefore God is real. Well, congratulations. If I describe God as a pubic hair, that doesn't mean that God's real just because pubic hair is real. It's weird.
Well, and then why are you calling an atheist show saying that the Bible is part of what you're using to support your claims? Like that's going to be the last thing we're going to agree with you on. So
yeah, you should be like, hey, have you read the Urantia book? Or why did you pick the Bible? Why didn't you pick what the Bhagavad Gita says? Why didn't you pick what any other religion says? Why pick any of them? Why not just say, I believe that God is light and light is real, and therefore, because fundamentally that your personal opinion doesn't carry any weight. What you need to figure out is neither does the personal opinion of whoever wrote the Bible, but also the authors of the Bible were not merely describing God as light. And you and I had this conversation before when you tried to pull this bullshit. And I was talking about how it uses God as light as a metaphor, a light to the world, not as light, because Genesis 1 says what? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved on the face of the waters, and God said, what? Let there be light. If God was light in the literal sense that you're trying to do, then God cannot say, let there be light, because there already was light. It was light that was speaking. Light isn't going to create light because light already exists. You have a fundamentally flawed thing, and you are desperately flailing around to find some religion to prop up your pet notion.
Very
All right.
bizarre.
We have one final theist caller, I hope. Tim's calling from New York, says evidence for God in AI. Wow. I don't know what to say, Tim, because those 5 words pretty much make me not want to listen to you and assume that you are just a prank caller who's full of shit. And that is completely unfair of me. And so I'm just going to assume that there's something more here than the words evidence for God in AI, as AI, well, whatever. Tim, what is the evidence for God in AI?
Hi, Matt. It's nice to meet you. It's a long time coming. I've been listening to you for my whole life, and I know you don't like to hear that. I was an atheist for a long time. I mean, I never really...
Okay, I'm muting you, Tim. I tried to give you advance warning. You are on the shakiest of footing right now. I don't care how long you've been listening to me. I am absolutely, completely unimpressed. In fact, I'm usually impressed negatively by people say, I used to be an atheist. Because when somebody says, I used to be an atheist, my first question is, were you a skeptic? Because if you're no longer an atheist and you were a skeptic, that means something convinced you that there's a God. And as a skeptic and as a reasonable person, you should be able to tell me exactly what that was, and it should convince me as well. But you called in to say evidence for God in AI. I already told you that it's unfair to you to assume that you're full of shit, but don't waste time telling me the backstory. Why do you think there's evidence for God in AI?
Okay, now that humans have advanced to be able to create intelligences, it seems that we're able to rally off creating these intelligences. So, since an intelligence can create many intelligences fast, it would make it seem that it would be more likely for one of these intelligences to come from a god, or a creator rather.
I reject your assertion.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call it an assertion. I would say
it is literally an assertion. You just asserted that. Do you not know what the word assertion means?
Well, I don't think that it's proof, but I think that it's evidence.
Okay. I didn't say the word proof or evidence. I said assertion, and then I asked you if you knew what the fuck assertion means. Assertion means claim. You just claimed that if there are AIs, it's more likely to come from a god. That is by definition an assertion. Fuck with me some more.
Mm-hmm. Well, since we have, furthermore, we have
No, there's not going to be any furthermore. I don't know what script you've got there, but the only thing we need to hear from you is what is your justification for the assertion that if there is an artificial intelligence, that it came from a god? Last chance.
Well, can't we use analogical reasoning?
I can, you can't. Goodbye. Analogical reasoning. Wow. Wow.
Anytime I see that AI is going to be part of the conversation when it comes to God claims, I generally am not looking forward to it.
Analogical is not even a thing. I think he might have meant analogous. Somebody in chat suggested he might have meant anal logic. But anal logic is just pulling it out of your ass. And I'm not interested in what you pulled out of your ass. So here's the thing. If human beings have in fact created artificial intelligence, that came from us, but that doesn't mean that we came from another intelligence. And it doesn't mean that any particular intelligence came from intelligence, because Was there a first intelligence? Oh, yes, that's God. Well, congratulations. Once again, you've gone back for an infinite regress and tried to put a stop on it instead of actually presenting evidence for the proposition. Oh, well, this is evidence for the simulation. No, it's not. Well, it's evidence that there's aliens that might have created us. No, it's not. Because just like there could be a billion civilizations that have existed and died across the universe right now, it could also be the case that we are the first. And it could also be the case that we are the last. We are in an incredibly privileged position of being able to observe the universe in a way that tells us about it. At some point, the heat death of the universe is going to make it so that not only is there not life, but at some point the universe is going to expand to the point where people won't even be able to get the evidence they need to understand the reality that they exist in. And if all you're going to do is look at, human beings have got to the point where they can create into AIs, so that means it's more likely that any intelligence is created by something else. No, sorry. There's a problem when you start using that analogic, because analogies are always flawed. And in much the same way that if every time I've been wet, it's because it was raining, does that mean the next time I'm wet is because it rained? No, it could be because there's a shower. It could be because I jumped in a swimming pool. It could be because I sweated. Even if the only time I'd ever been wet previous to this was because it was raining, that doesn't mean that's the cause of the future one. Just because we can create artificial intelligence doesn't mean that we can create non-artificial intelligence in any sense other than reproducing. And that's not us creating. That's just matter happening. That's just patterns shifting. Final call for today, and then we're going on to super chats. All the super chats over $10 will be read tonight. But we've got Mike, who's been on hold for like almost an hour and a half, has a question about, is it okay to enjoy Christianity even if I don't believe in it? Hey, Mike.
What's up, Matt? So I can't be on here for too long, but to start off, I wanted to say I realized I should have specified my question more. Sorry, spring allergies, which was my mistake from the beginning. What I mean by I enjoy Christianity, even though I don't believe in it, I don't mean I enjoy, as in I enjoy the religion itself, because I would in fact say it's very much the opposite for me. I think the religion in and of itself is very flawed and contradictory to itself and to what they believe in. I feel like, because they go around preaching how God is all loving, God is this, God is that, and we should follow His example, while they're over here preaching about taking bisexual kids to
Mike, I think we can do this easier. Maybe you want to tell us what it is that you do enjoy about Christianity.
What I mean is I enjoy certain mediums that involve Christianity or that have Christian themes to it, like certain Disney movies, for example. And like I just went to the movie theaters yesterday to watch King of Kings with my dad, and like I actually thought it was a decent film. But at the same time, it feels weird to me as somebody who doesn't believe in Christianity, to get some kind of reaction or enjoyment out of these. So like, what would you say about that?
Content like that is designed to be entertaining. That's like their whole hope. Whether it ends up being high quality entertainment or not is different. There's still some like DC Talk and Switchfoot songs from back in my Christian days that I'll play because I like the music. I'd say you may be overthinking it. Now, personally, do I want to go give my money to things that are overtly supporting different churches? No, that's not really what I want to do. But I mean, I think we're getting into like a weird territory if we're like, well, in this Disney movie, it had this kind of theme, so I don't know if I should entertainment is entertainment. I think it depends on what you're doing with that. Like if it's causing you to change beliefs, then that's a thing to examine and criticize. But I guess I don't fully understand what you're asking, but yeah, as far as like, there are some Christian songs I'll still play sometimes. There are, I'm trying to think of other examples. I'm not.
Yeah, my all-time favorite.
I'm not thought policing myself.
My all-time favorite Christian rock band is Petra, and they were great songwriters. They were great musicians, and I would probably still enjoy listening to the music if I didn't have to pay attention to the lyrics, because the lyrics are promoting Christianity, which is garbage. And so there's no way I'm going to go see this King of Kings movie and give money to make people think that this is something that a narrative that I think should continue to make money and people should be exposed to. I don't think so. So I'm not going to be supportive of it. You like what you like. I mean, if you're looking for approval, I'm not going to give it to you. If you're not looking for approval, I don't know why you're called.
Well, the reason I called to ask that question is because I see like all the time, certain Christians have said that some stupid bullshit, like if you enjoy this thing that involves God, that means it's God slowly converting you over to Christianity. And it's like, well, why can't I just enjoy it because I enjoy it?
Did you ask them if they've ever liked something that they think might be of Satan?
No, I have not. But I have heard them say, you shouldn't listen to this music. You shouldn't play this video game. You shouldn't You shouldn't watch this movie because that if you like this certain thing, that means it's the devil trying to get inside your head and convert you over to, worshiping the devil or something like that.
Well, they're also instructed
like,
to pray without ceasing, and I'm pretty sure they don't do that.
Yeah. And not to mention it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense to me because I'm pretty sure the Bible says, don't do this in real life. It doesn't say anything about, well, don't do this. Don't put this inside a video game or inside of a cartoon, or don't put this inside of the lyrics.
When you start talking about how the Bible doesn't talk about video games, you lose all credibility. Hello?
Oh, I'm still here. I just didn't know if you wanted to continue, but I'm saying what I'm trying to say is the reason that I say that is because I've dealt with this all the time, including family members, in fact, that say, well, you ought to feel bad for listening to that because that's the devil trying to get in your head. And I was listening to a song, and I'm sitting back thinking, how the fuck can the devil get inside my headphones? That doesn't make sense to me. Why can't I just enjoy it because I enjoy it?
They don't mean inside your headphones, but whatever they mean, you should just ask them to prove it.
Right, and I have. And
have they proven it?
I asked that question. Nope.
Okay, then you're still in a holding pattern. If they make a claim and you say prove it, you are now waiting for them to prove it or to admit that they can't. Have they admitted that they can't?
No.
Then the ball's in their court and you're waiting.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. Even when they try to give an explanation, the only thing, usually I'll ask them a question, to kind of see if they like to talk about the Bible. So I say, well, if God really is this loving person,
why did he let his only son get crucified? Why was he going to let Abraham sacrifice his only son?
Mike, he didn't let his only son get crucified. He came down and intentionally took human forms to sacrifice himself to serve as a loophole for rules that he's in charge of. So it's not like,
right.
When you say, why did he let his son get crucified? He didn't let him. That was the plan. That was the necessary component for salvation.
Right. That was my bad. I apologize.
Well, here's the thing, Mike. So, if they're not going to prove their claims, and you're not going to fairly represent them in conversation, you just shouldn't be talking about religion at all, because you don't give enough of a shit to get it right and point out the problems, and they don't give enough of a shit to prove it. So it's just like, find something else to talk about.
Fair enough. What I was trying to say was, even when I asked them to provide proof, and I say, well, why would all this happen if God really is as loving as they say? Usually the only thing they can think of to respond back is, well, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Prove it.
Right. And that's basically what made me not believe in God. Because I used to believe in God, but as you get older, I know as they say, well, it's blasphemous to question God, but isn't it human nature to question, well, almost anything you can't find an understanding of?
Not anymore. I wish it were, but evidently people will accept any shit from anybody uncritically. But yes, it is, of course, eminently reasonable to expect that if there is a God that wants a relationship with you, much like if there's a person that wants a relationship with me, they should introduce themselves and have a conversation. I don't need, for example, if Promise had a friend that really wanted to talk to me about something, I'd be happy to talk to Promise and relay information, but I would much rather just have Promise introduce us so that I can have a conversation with that person. That way, Promise doesn't have to do any more work than a quick introduction, rather than being a go-between. I literally had somebody who was in a conversation with Noam Chomsky start emailing me, telling me what Noam said, getting me to respond, and then sending my responses back to Noam. I had a debate with Noam Chomsky by proxy without the two of us ever interacting directly, because that's what somebody did. So I don't want to do that to other people. But yeah.
Right. And I just wanted to touch on to what the other dude was saying, earlier, saying how, if we're here, we must be here for a reason. And I can understand that, but at the same time, why does that reason have to be because an almighty Skyfather put us here? Why can't we just be here for a reason that's not about God?
I don't know. You should call him.
I wouldn't want to lose any less brain cells than I already have, but
probably a good idea.
And also, I just want to say I appreciate you, because I've seen a lot of stuff you do, and I appreciate, whenever you see someone trying to sneak in some bullshit, you don't let them get away with it. Like that other dude earlier who was
Mike. Show's over. I don't need you to relive my greatest hits.
No, yeah, fair enough. I was just talking about the dude that said, well, yeah, I know Catholics do this, but what about, let's look at what this other group does.
But you're going to try and do it anyway, so never mind. Okay. All right. On that note, we are finished with calls for today, and we're moving on to Super Chats. Sorry, but nothing bores me quicker than people trying to go, oh, you remember that time you had that conversation with this person and they said this thing and you said that thing and that was really cool? No, I probably don't remember. I probably don't remember some of the conversation from earlier in this episode. But yeah, definitely don't need to relive it. But I appreciate the fact that you benefited from it, and I wish you well. All right. You want to go first?
You go. Sure. $9.99 from Greg Markowski. Oh man, Matt and Promise makes for a perfect Wednesday. Thanks, Greg.
True. Thank you so
I
much.
was looking forward to this.
$10 from Zach. Me too. You can ask Arden, because I was like, I get to do the show with Promise night, don't I? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, cool. $10 from Zachary Herring. Can I say that I'm a methodological hard atheist, but philosophical soft atheist, since I know I can't defend the no God claim, but act as if it's not possible? Is this a valid or useful distinction? I would think you would have that backwards. So it would be to the extent. So, for example, I'm a methodological naturalist, which means I'm not asserting that the supernatural isn't real. I just don't get to include it in consideration. And so from that standpoint, I can't demonstrate that God isn't real, but I don't have any reason to include it as a candidate explanation. And then from a philosophical standpoint, depending on the definition of God, I may in fact be a hard atheist. As long as we don't require absolute certainty for knowledge, there are some gods that I know do not exist because either they are logically contradictory or contradictory to observed facts, something, they're like a square circle or something like that. So in the philosophical sense, I think you could possibly be a harder atheist than you could just from methodological naturalism. But either way, I don't know that the labels and the distinction you're trying to make are actually, and this may be the fault of a short super chat, I don't think they're actually useful. I think it's much better to just say, I'm not convinced a God exists. And if you also happen to be strongly convinced a particular God doesn't exist, then when you engage with somebody who believes in that God, say that.
Yeah, makes sense. 10 pounds from Herbie Shine. Not sure I'll stay awake to watch the whole show, but we'll catch up later today. Everything happening in the U.S. under the Orange King's regime is beyond awful, and I fear for you all and the rest of us. Thanks, Herbie.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much,
as always.
$10 in alleged money from the 51st state from a narco possum. At what point is it justified? So sorry. At what point is it justified to take arms against the Orange Man's regime? They already crossed so many lines already. What do you think would take to finally say that's enough, or that's it, that's enough? I'm not going to answer that question. I will say I'm not convinced that time is now, but I have no idea when that time is going to be. But you'll know when I think we reach that point.
LA Silver Surfers with Arden's picture sent a $9.99 super sticker. Oh, wait, it's Arden.
Yeah.
That's just Arden.
Yeah, I have to put them in manually because our system doesn't pick up on stickers.
Yeah.
Got it.
It does super chats, but not stickers. Speaking of super chats.
Where can we see the sticker over on? I guess we just can't see them, can we?
If you go to the live chat and go to fan funding tab on the top left, you should be able to scroll back. I think because you're a mod, you should have access to that. So,
okay. I'm still learning, everybody.
I don't know how any of it works. $50 from Dono, and love y'all. Go AVS, go Avs, go. That's probably a sports team thing.
I would be the last person to know. $10 from Storm Chaser Noah. I called to ask about God's word versus Moses' word in Numbers chapter 31, and you just happened to answer the question as I was on hold. Thanks for the show as usual. Thanks, Noah.
Yeah, no problem.
Glad that worked out.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing because so far as I can tell, the word of God doesn't exist, but there's lots of people who claim to have the word of God, and all of them admit that they got it from someone else who they think got it from God.
Yep.
$20 from Godfrey and Good. Aloha. I listened to Forrest and Brady on Monday. A caller spoke to them as if they were never Christian. Have you ever seen stats of the number of atheists that are former Christians or theists? I bet most in the West were. So atheists in the West represent somewhere between 1 and 15% of the population. It's very difficult to get good information. There used to be a site called adherents.org, adherents.org. You might be able to go back on the Wayback Machine to find old data. but there are fewer, based on my experience in interacting with atheists and seeing studies over the years. There are much fewer lifelong atheists. They are rarer than people who believed at some point, but the degree to which people believed and the length of time to which they believed is varied. You know, one of my former co-hosts is a third generation atheist and his son is a fourth generation atheist. But then I also know people who believed for a couple of weeks as a kid and then, you know, but they still get counted as a believer. And then there are people like me who were sincere believers. There's the entire clergy project, which is filled with former clergy people. I don't know if there's really good data. And part of it is because we are still a marginalized portion of the population. And so a lot of people just don't even use the labels or admit to it.
Yep.
Hey,
True.
this one's yours.
$10 from Alan B. Promise is just so damn good for this channel. That's very kind. Thank you, Alan. I
should
being
see
here.
I should see like 5 or 6 more of those, I would think, before we're done. But
Oh boy.
$20 from Melody Lumen. Oh, is this the Melody that was on hold? I don't know. Between your time with the last show you were with and the line, I was finally able to deconstruct from my religious and abusive background and find me. Thanks to both you and Promise. F you, Jimmy. Yeah, that's fair. I'm glad that anything I've done, you know, if people found it useful and helped find their way out of religious beliefs or found their way to skepticism or to humanism, that's awesome. Thanks for letting me know. And now go unto the world and share what you've learned with others so that they might benefit as well. I say this in the name of me.
The name of Matt compels you. $9.99 from Jet Powered Goldfish. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the bulb has to want to change. That's a good one. That is cute.
That's good. $10 from Firebird XX. What video games you guys into right now are looking forward to? Switch 2. I don't have a Switch 2. I'm not getting a Switch 2. My Switch 1 got used for couple of months off and on and has been sitting. I don't even know where it is.
Mine is collecting dust.
I game on PC and I stream on Twitch regularly. I've been playing Blueprints, which I beat yesterday. And before that, Path of Exile 2, but Grinding Gear Games decided to completely fuck that game over. So I'm waiting for the next season and the patch stuff for them to make it not suck. Other than that, I'm not really looking forward to any games, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not much of a gamer. The game that I was obsessed with for years and years was Wolfenstein, and nothing has ever scratched that itch. So,
well, there's a new Doom coming, so
here we go. Is this me? $9.99 from Jam and J. While deployed, we heard a Spectrum Grape victim was being held by Iraqi police. They wouldn't give her to her family because they were going to unalive her. I'm mad when people think this shit is a joke. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
unfortunately, regularly happens.
Sorry, I had to read that 2 or 3 times because the code that we have to go through, and I realize Arden is like 50% of what I said today going to have to get cut out for fear of being demonetized. And at a minimum, we're going to have to put trigger warnings on all the rape discussion stuff.
I mean, generally, that kind of detail gets added to the description, but generally speaking, we don't go that hard on like trigger warnings or anything like that. I don't cut out cusses most of the time. It hasn't been an issue for us.
And I didn't think about it earlier. When I get going, I mean, nothing's going to stop me from railing against injustice and religious corruption because these rich fucking liars are poisoning the world and making it worse. But if the way I've said it winds up getting the channel in trouble or the content not viewed, then it was a mistake because we need to reach as many people as possible. So if we have to censor me for that, that would be the only reason. But $10 from Firebird XX. Promise, I think you're the best new addition to the line since Forrest, and it's been a pleasure watching your videos. Also, Matt, been watching you since 2013. Keep up the great work. You suck, though. Miss your debates. The "you suck" though wasn't there. I turned down a couple debates, and there are a few in the works. We'll see. Mostly, the people most likely to engage in debates are evidently absolutely terrified. Ridvan won't debate me. Sat around and mocked the very idea that I would suggest that he debated me, while he's pretending to still be a skeptic, while failing to do it. I get it. And then his Christian buddies are lying about what I've said and avoiding debates with me as well. So, I'm just going to claim victory. I have debated and will continue to debate. And when somebody wants to, they can book a debate. Until then, I just clearly won because they're afraid.
Sounds fair to me. And thank you, Firebird, for the kind words. It's very, very nice of you. $9.99 from Daniel. Hey, Matt and Promise. Thanks for the show. Sorry I haven't donated in a minute. What's the best way to donate? I know YouTube takes a significant cut.
Arden,
Yes.
where is the least cut taken? Is it in merch? Is it in
Patreon?
Patreon. Patreon.com/call the line.
Yes. But thank you
Thank you so much,
and
Daniel.
thanks for supporting.
$10 from Paul Meixner. If one went over to Forest Place and was struck in the lower back, would they have been injured in the lumbar region? Oh, Forest Lumber. Okay.
Wow. I'm glad you got that because my brain stopped working after 8 o'clock. That's amazing. I get it. I get it now.
That's a long walk around the park for a week. I think you owe us another $10, Paul. It might be the only time I've said that.
$10 from the Eternal Gospel. You simply don't listen. The Microsoft Azure team discovered that the universe has a boundary that has, is this the person that called? Has a boundary that has interference patterns. In other words, the universe is embedded in a field of light.
So the Eternal Gospel, you simply don't listen. Your point is irrelevant. Even if the Microsoft Azure team discovered that the universe has a boundary that has interference patterns and is a field of light, that doesn't tell you anything at all about a God. You only think that God is light because somebody said so. Well, congratulations. I say God is not light. God is pubic hair, and God told me that you are delusional and full of shit. God told me that the Microsoft Azure team found something useful and that you're so desperate to find a way to make it make sense that you went ahead and adopted it, even though you don't have good reason. God told me to stop taking calls from you. Prove me wrong.
And thanks for the $10.
Oh, no, there's another 20. Genesis 1 speaks of creation of the sun. I literally read Genesis 1. I literally read Genesis 1 and explained to you and everybody else why it doesn't matter what the Bible says. If the Bible could say that Matt is the smartest person on the planet, and that wouldn't make it true. For that, we'd need to actually figure out how to assess and measure whether or not I am, in fact, the smartest person on the planet, and whether or not some other Matt might be the smartest person on the planet. You don't get to keep going back to the Bible and assuming that it's true. You have to demonstrate that it's true. I don't know how many times I can explain this to you. Thanks for the money. Keep it coming.
$20 from Dew. I've already got a response from telling Arden how awesome it was, but so everyone here knows, Arden's presentation this past Saturday was amazing, and she got a standing ovation for it. It was great meeting her, and Promise too. It was so nice meeting you, Dew, and you're right. I was so proud of Arden. Tears in my eyes. She was incredible, communicated so clearly, very kindly and graciously, and yet extremely direct. And it was really well received, which as her friend was super cool to see. I was like, I'm standing, so I hope everyone behind me is gonna be standing too, or else I'm gonna be the embarrassing friend on the front row. Like, this is happening. But everybody else clearly felt the exact same way, and it was so cool to be there. And now I'm losing my voice from Arden and I yapping with each other all weekend.
And I haven't got to see it yet, but it was recorded, and we will be posting it probably in multiple places. There's also a chance that she might be traveling to give that talk or a version of that talk to other organizations as well. But
should.
Like, I was sitting here knowing that she was up there talking, but I couldn't be there. And I was like, oh, I hope it's going well. I know she put so much work and thought into this and everything else. And then Promises messaged me, and she's just like, you'd be so proud of her. She was awesome. And then several other people messaged to be like, that was the best talk of the conference, and she did so good. And yeah, don't tell her, but we're all very proud of her.
They're all lying. They have some strange plot to fuel my ego, but I won't fall for it.
Right. Hilarious. No, it was actually incredible.
$30 from Mike Internet 1941. Thanks for being two sane people saying reasonable things. I don't have any choice but to try to be both of those. When I stop being that, Arden has my permission to take me out behind the barn.
$10 from Mr. Boricua 10. Good show tonight. Opener was very well thought out. It had a certain provoking emotional fervor. Had a couple of spicy calls, but it seemed like not. But a ripple within. But it seemed like not, but a ripple within the pond. Keep on. Thank you.
See, these people
Yes,
who speak multiple languages shouldn't be more poetic than I can be in my own native language. I mean, oh, but it seemed like not but a ripple within the pond. So good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Boricua. $10 from Paul Meichner. Hey, I was kidding. Oh, this came in before I even. Oh, wow, there's going to be more. In the same vein as the eternal gospel, I would like to point out that Ezekiel 23:20 talks about guys who are hung like donkeys. Yes. And who's jizz. So it's not just for anybody who was offended that I referred to jizz. So does the Bible.
No, it's in the Bible. Yeah. Very much
I'll
in
let
the
you
Bible.
read this and I'll pull it up.
$10 from Aaliyah Shauna Silverbow. I used to hate facial hair, but then it grew on me. I don't get why bakers aren't wealthier. They make so much dough. I also had a joke about paper, but it's terrible. Thanks for the great show. Well done. Those were great. Thank you for the support.
Yes, the actual verse, Ezekiel 23:20. I'm going to do it. Let's see. Let's do it in the easy to read version. She remembered the lovers who excited her there, who were like animals in their sexual desire and abilities. Wow, that is the softest translation of that ever.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
in the English Standard Version, it's, and she lusted after her lovers there, whose members were like those of donkeys, and whose issue, that's jizz, was like that of horses. So the Bible, the good book, this I used to do this when people would talk about the Bible and the good book and everything else. I was like, okay, will you let me read stories of my choosing to your children from the Bible? And that gets back to, I believe maybe it was Colonel Ingersoll that said, but it could also have been Thomas Paine, that no book from a loving God should have anything that should shock the mind of a child. And I can find plenty of stories. The thing is, every parent should say yes, because I care more about your children than you do, evidently, because I would not read those objectionable stories to your kid just to prove a point to you. Instead, I would read them to you and then ask you, are you okay reading those to your kids? But, she lusted after her lovers whose penises were the size of donkey penises. That's in the Bible, just phrased in a much more Mr. Boricua poetic way. Isn't you?
I'm muted, like I always am. $10 from Rich S. Thanks for the open discussion. Appreciate the opportunity to hear us out and engagement. Apologies that I didn't bring more to the table, but I'll be back. Cheers. No, I really appreciated the conversation, Rich. You're welcome to call back.
Yep, and I look forward to it, because one of a couple of different things is going to happen, Rich, and I've done this with other people before. Either you're going to find a good argument supported by evidence that's enough to convince anybody, any reasonable person, that a God exists. That's option number one. It's not the one I'm betting on, but I'm open to it. Number two is that I will convince you that you don't have good reasons for your beliefs, and you will give up those beliefs because you can't maintain them. I'm not particularly optimistic about that one either, because the experience has shown that for a lot of people, when we reach that point, it's just well, let's agree to disagree. And at a minimum, what I hope will happen is that you and I, and Promise and whoever else is here having those discussions with you, will benefit from a better understanding of things. But mostly, there will be believers out there who hear your defense and our response, and they will benefit. So that if in fact you present good argument with evidence that doesn't convince me, somebody else will benefit from it. And if we debunk your arguments and it doesn't convince you, somebody else will benefit from it. I don't just do this for the person on the phone. I fully admit I frequently use the people on the phone to reach the people who agree with them.
Right.
And I will sometimes ask questions and do things in a specific way, not because I'm working with the person on the phone, but because I'm doing this for the benefit of somebody watching. But thanks, Rich. $10 from Paul Meixner. Show's not over until the super chats are read. True. And here we go. More from Paul. Paul, you don't owe us $10. I take that back. You already went over and above, but
$10 from Paul. Keep a little dirt under your pillow for the dirt man so he won't take you down to his lair deep under the mountain underground. That's where he keeps his dirt.
Wait a minute.
Thanks, Paul.
How can dirt be underground if ground is dirt? See, you can't do stuff like this when I'm in debate mode. And Arden will tell you I'm actually in debate mode about, 93% of my waking hours?
I relate.
I think that's generous. Yeah. 93% is pretty good.
Yeah. Yuka has to tell me, like, hey, I'm not calling into your show right now. I'm just trying to talk to you.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, all right, fine.
$10 from SJL. I tend to replace I used to be an atheist with I was non-practicing for a while. Generalization, but it fits so often. Okay. I'm still practicing until I get it right. Actually, you should practice not until you get it right. You should practice until you can't get it wrong.
Nice. $50 from Don Owen. Matt, I'm a huge fan. I've been watching your content for probably a decade at this point. You've been an amazing influence in my life. Thanks for everything you do. Big fan of Promise too, of course. Cheers, y'all. And yes, Avs are my hockey team.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, thanks so much,
Thank
Don.
you.
It's incredibly kind and incredibly generous. And while I don't tend to watch hockey, don't know much about it, I think my biggest problem with hockey is that by the time I developed any interest in it, it was kind of too late to really get into it. And now, even though in the early days, watching hockey on TV, I couldn't do because the camera can't follow the puck. And it's just like, oh, here's some people skating around. Everything's blurry. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, goal. Okay. And now you've got, high def stuff, so you could actually follow it, and you've got cameras on the puck. Now the game makes a lot more sense, but I just don't care as much. So, but I hope your Avs do well and play fairly, and that they do better than Riley Gaines, who could never manage to get better than fifth and is now going on Fox News complaining about how the left don't want to date people like Riley Gaines. Yeah, it's not because you came in fifth and tied with another woman, and then decided to turn your life into, look, I'm a miserable failure, so I'm going to shit on everybody else. It's because you're ugly.
That's not where I thought you were going with that. That's amazing.
Inside.
Inside, obviously. That's what we're saying. $9.99 from Sarah Christine. Sending love to my entire atheist community. All is not lost yet, fam. There's still hope as long as we're willing to fight for freedom and decency.
I hope so.
It's not over till it's over. And people, there has been worse for other less privileged people that have been
Yeah.
experiencing this bullshit their entire lives, that have
Yeah.
always been discriminated against and have always faced what now collectively we're facing. And I think that's what helps me have a bit of hope here is like, okay, I'm just now getting a taste of some of this, but some of my friends have experienced this their whole lives. So,
Yeah. And part of what's happening right now is, I think, a contingent of people who come from a long line of privilege who are starting to see that privilege wane and be recognized, and starting to see the people that they and their ancestors have oppressed standing up, and they're terrified of losing that privileged position, and so they're doing extra work to shut that shit down. And it's why woke is being used as a substitute word for any number of things, like the N word, the T slur, the F slur, whatever. Oh, I don't like queers around my kids. You can't say that anymore. So you don't like the woke agenda being taught in schools. Oh, I've seen tons of memes on this. I saw a good one this morning, which is probably what's prompting this. But the anti-woke stuff is absolutely just code for the bigotry that they used to write large. Now it's a substitute, when in reality, all anybody ever meant by woke or DEI or any of those things is the world has not been fair. Some tiny subset of the population has been in privileged positions of control, which made it more difficult for other people who should be just as eligible and just as qualified. And let's work to fix that. And the people who were benefiting the most from that privileged position are really terrified that they're going to wind up being treated the way they treated others.
well said. I wasn't smiling at anything you said. Arden sent me a funny text as you're saying the most serious thing of the super
She's
chat.
got great
So
timing. That's why I love her.
she does. Is this one me? $15
Yeah.
from advanced beginner. Catholics are waiting for a new leader chosen by fiat by a group of men of God. Magic smoke will tell them if their choice is fair. No one has any problem with that. Trump is orange with envy. Yeah, that whole thing is wild.
I will say, I could be wrong here. I always try to fairly represent the religions. And so when you start putting Catholic dogma or doctrine on Protestants, I'm going to call out that that's unfair. And the same thing with Protestant ones. I was never Catholic, so I might get this wrong. I don't think there's any Catholic doctrine at all suggesting that the smoke is magic. I think when they've made their decision, set up a particular color of smoke. And prior to them making their decision, they just put up another smoke. It's not the smoke that's deciding. The smoke is an indication that they have decided.
Yeah, it's all their traditions, and which to me is wild enough because the amount of money just that you could make from selling off some of the gold things that they parade around is really wild.
I think it's wild that as rich as the Catholic Church is, Elon is twice as rich.
That's a terrible fact. Yikes. Very wild.
$10 from Jamnik06. Hey, man. Yo, mama's so ugly. When she tried to join an ugly contest, they said, sorry, no professionals. She's so fat that a full moon turns her into a warehouse. When she goes camping, bears hide food from her.
They know I like your mom jokes. Thank you. Which, did you hear I made a your mom joke one time? We had a caller and the call was just getting so painful. And it literally turned into look at the trees. And so I said they're like, how do you know the trees aren't whatever? And I said, how do we know your mom isn't? And everyone thought it was funny. It was just like a little moment. And then we went back to the conversation. And the next guy calls in to send his condolences and stand in solidarity with the gentleman who I said unbecoming things about his family member.
Wow.
Truly, truly wild. So now we like your mom jokes over here.
I guess.
$10 from Velociraptor Z0. I loved seeing Promise, other hosts, and everyone else in Minneapolis last weekend. Thanks, y'all, especially the women, for being visible and vocal. Arden absolutely crushed her presentation, by the way. It was so cool to meet all of you. We had the best time. Really, it was just like Arden and I being attached at the waist and just like running around everywhere together and getting to meet you guys and see you and like the chewed gum. What do we call it? Merch. It was a fun time.
I really appreciate that message, and I really appreciate you also including especially the women. Like I was mentioning earlier, there was it's not over, but there's a period of time where the discussions about diversity in the broader secular community are going to come up. They're going to keep coming up. And what I need to keep reminding people is that if the organization is too cishet white dude, the cishet white dudes are going to have to help fix it, but they're going to need someone other than that. They need some people who don't fit those categories to bear with being the only one there, so that when somebody else shows up, they aren't the only one there. And so it takes, for lack of a better term, it takes some tough folks from marginalized categories being willing to be the only one for a while so that other people can show up and not be alone. And so, yes, a huge thank you to everyone who's not a cishet white dude who participates in this stuff. And for all you cishet white dudes out there, you're not doing enough. That all of us, I don't think there's a cishet white dude out there that, including me, that is remotely doing enough to increase diversity and representation in the broader secular community. We can all do better. $10 from Paul Meixner. Far be it from me to not pay up. Well, there you go. I won't put out that call again until it's absolutely needed, which means as we gear up for the Recovering from Religion fundraiser in the near future, be ready, because that's when I will be asking for money.
$10 from Secular Felinist. Yo, mama, so dumb she sold her car for gas money. That's really good.
Jimmy just sent me some stuff, and that distracted me and got me on the wrong page. Boom, boom, boom. And Paul said, your mama's so fat, she actually got approved by her insurance company for Ozempic. Wow.
Imagine an insurance company approving anybody, anything.
I'm not fond. I get it. Everything in good humor, and I'm not going to throw complete cold water on everything. I'm not as fond of the ones that involve like body shaming stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
But
I think that there's also maybe like like some kind of gap in the kind of your mom jokes that I know, because I know there's like yo mama jokes, which I think is a whole thing, and then your mom jokes, which to me is more like, I don't know, we'll be out at a museum and there'll be like the weirdest looking painting, and I'll turn to whoever I'm with and be like, oh, look, it's your mom. You know, those kind of things. But that's kind of hard to do in a super chat. I don't know how one would go about that. I thought that Matt was frozen for a second, but he's just that still.
Are you reading the emails Jimmy sent to us?
Yeah, okay. I shouldn't, but
no, you shouldn't. It has nothing. It's not relevant.
Okay. Am I correct that is the end of the super chats?
Oh no, there's one more that just came in a minute ago.
Okay, because it's not showing up on mine, and that's what I was kind of waiting for. There we go.
There you go.
There it is. $10 from One-Eyed Heathen. I've got one of those. I don't care who the next pope will be. I only care about Zlod, the true anti-pope, like a hammer to a cantaloupe, y'all. On that note, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This really is Wednesday, no matter how I'm feeling, you guys always make me feel better. It's always a better show. It's always better with Promise here. So thank you so much for joining me this week.
Thanks for
And
having
thank
me.
you to Arden for producing, to our call screeners, moderators, everything else. Don't forget, this network does a lot of different stuff. There's my show on Wednesday night, but Thursday at 2 o'clock Central is the Transatlantic Call-In Show. You get to talk to actual real live trans folks to talk about, are you transphobic? How do you avoid being transphobic? Are your friends transphobic? What's the best way to be an ally for this? And how do you actually deal with stuff if you're curious? What if I'm using the wrong language? All of those things are incredibly useful discussions that happen on the Transatlantic Call-In Show. This coming Sunday, I'm not completely sure what the schedule is for the shows because I'm at a reptile expo, but I should be back in time to maybe do After Dark. We're still kind of up in the air there. But Monday is Skeptalk. Tuesday is Chewed Gum with Promise and Alyssa. And that's it. You guys are awesome. I
Thanks,
hear
Arden.
the music. I see
I
this
miss
girl.
you.
It's so good when all my friends are friends. And any of them that aren't friends, well. In the meantime, patreon.com/calltheline is how you can support us on Patreon. You can go to linemerch.com to find line merch stuff and get ready to be supportive of recoveringfromreligion.org. See you next time.
Yes.